You set foot on foreign soil. Only this land isn't ruled by any country or government. In this land, we celebrate music. In this land, we celebrate games. In this land, we celebrate those who compose video game music. Welcome to the VG Embassy. Welcome and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the VG Embassy. This is a show centered around video game music and the amazing online community of fans and podcasters that enjoy it. My name's Ed, and on each episode I'll take the role of Prime VGM Minister and invite a guest VG Ambassador onto the show to share with us their own video game music culture. Or I may share a part of my culture on a solo show. It's another culturific episode of the VG Embassy. This is a game that is deeply ingrained in not only my gaming history, but my entire family's, and I think that my VG Ambassador of the day is also a huge fan. Please welcome, I know you can't clap, we can't hear you clapping, but you can clap in your car or wherever you are. Give a big hand to Mr. Ben Dishman, the Dyad. Welcome back to the show, sir. How are you?
Hooray, hooray. I'm imagining the cheers.
Dyad, woo!
Or perhaps, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Maybe that is what we're hearing right now.
Yes, I'd clap the microphone, but that'd probably kill everybody's ears.
Yeah, we'd have to take that out in post.
Yeah. So how are you, sir?
I'm doing okay. That's my standard answer for you every time now.
Okay is as good as you can expect in these quarantine times anyway. So.
Yeah, these are strange times. That you have timestamped this episode for when Congress decides to put this in the Library of Congress,
Yeah, well, when they actually build the VG Embassy and give it diplomatic immunity, then this will be, we'll know exactly where this one stands. This will be in the quarantine wing of the building on display with the other quarantine, like the 3DO show and the Neo Geo CD show, all done.
Yeah.
All done under risk of COVID-19. So.
The problem with the quarantine wing is once you go, you can't leave.
Without a mask.
Right.
You have to have a branded VG Embassy mask, which we will sell for quite a premium. So anyways, what's been up? You've been doing a ton of art lately and supplying a lot of the VGM community with artwork. So is that one of the ways you've been kind of keeping busy during this whole stay-at-home thing? Yeah,
I've been trying to stay active and improve my pixel art game. So been doing some commissions, as you mentioned. A lot of generous and misguided pixel art fans out there are asking me to do work for them. I am still, at the time of this recording, I've been working on a Game Boy demo with fellow VG Embassy ambassador Michael Bridgewater.
Very cool.
And our demo team. It's not, I shouldn't say our, I am just the one who wanders in off the streets and gives them some art, and then they do all the fancy stuff.
Yeah, well, the art is like being the singer of the band. That's what people see the first and get the first impressions. So it's important.
That's paralyzed me with fear now that you've said that.
Yes, no pressure there. No pressure at all. It's just 100% of the game. That's all.
Right, exactly. For people who are either interested in doing pixel art or looking at it, there is a Twitter account called Pixel Dailies, and every day they have a prompt, and then you have the day to complete the prompt in pixel art. And I've been trying to do those as well to, in downtime. I've got a new phone with a stylus, so I can draw on my phone, do whatever, and it's a cool thing to either flex your art muscles or just to see some cool pixel art.
Very cool. Yeah, that sounds like a great way to get a little more, experience and technique and drawing things that you normally wouldn't think of or want to. So yeah, that's extremely cool.
Yeah, I recommend it.
I will check it out for sure. And I do wish you luck on the Game Boy game as well. I can't wait to play it when it comes out.
Yeah, someday.
So speaking of games, that's why we're all here. We are going to be focusing on a game series with an incredible selection of soundtracks. Even though we're playing 12 tracks on this episode, it is literally the teeny tiny tip of the soundtrack iceberg that is the Katamari series. And I am so glad, Ben, that you suggested this one. I'm a huge fan of the series, and I didn't know if anyone out there was equally as interested in the music in the game as I was. So when you suggested it to me, I was like, my eyes lit up, and I was absolutely ecstatic to start putting this show together. So what is your experience with the Katamari Damacy series? Have you played all the games, or just kind of like the first couple?
I've played the first 2.5. I played the first 2 religiously and extensively, and I played the third one, I think, far after its release, and at that point, it was not capturing my attention as well as the first 2 were. We'll get into it, but it is sort of more of the same generally, and I'm trying to remember how I played it, because I don't remember even owning it. Maybe I was at someone's house, or maybe I had borrowed a physical copy or something. But when we started talking about doing this episode, I was trying to remember how I had even heard of the game in the first place, because it's kind of a weird one. Do you remember how you heard of the game for the first time?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So this game was kind of talked about a lot in the back pages of video game magazines like EGM and GamePro, because it was one of those really interesting, unique Japanese games that they were writing a lot about in the magazines, but they weren't 100% sure if it was going to be released stateside. So my brother got a import PlayStation 2 mainly because he was really into the Guitar Freaks series, Konami's like pre-Guitar Hero guitar game. And so when we found out about this game, we were like, oh, this game looks really good. We should get the import copy because it might not come out over here. So we got the Japanese Katamari Damacy and absolutely loved it. Like, we had no idea what was going on. I mean, you don't really need to understand the dialogue to be able to play the game.
Right.
So our first experience with the game was, just playing it and looking at all the bizarre and crazy characters and the graphics and thinking just how extremely Japanese it was and would American audiences really be able to understand or appreciate it. And lo and behold, a few months later, it was announced that it was going to be coming out in North America. So we were extremely happy to be able to play it and understand, all of the plot and dialogue, which was as equally funny and silly as the game is.
Right. I was going to say, it was wonderful dialogue.
Yeah. So, and then from there, we just really kind of fell in love with it. And like you, I think the first 2 games we played really religiously. The third game, now when you talk about the third game, were you talking about the Xbox 360 game or the PSP game?
Yeah, sorry, I should have said, I guess it's not technically the third game.
The third console game,
right?
Basically. Yeah, so the third technical game, as we'll go through the show, was released on the PSP. So I played that a lot as well, and then kind of fell off. And I'll talk more about my history with the later games as we go throughout the show. But this just became a game that I would love to play. Even after I had beaten it, it was one of those kind of cathartic, just pick up and play a couple stages and just have some fun and not think about things for a while. It's a very therapeutic kind of game. I think we've talked about it enough that we should probably explain a little bit of the kind of gameplay that goes along with Katamari. Do you want to start on the explanation and maybe I'll fill in the gaps?
Sure. At its core, you are a teeny tiny character who pushes around a ball, a sticky ball, that picks up things from the ground and gets bigger and bigger, like a snowball, or I think one of the inspirations for the game was a dung beetle. Mm-hmm. So if you'll imagine how you would roll a snowball, you just start with something small, and as it rolls, it picks up things from the ground and gets bigger and bigger. And your object of the game is to get your Katamari to be a certain size and then turn it into a star.
Exactly. That's pretty much the gist of it. Sometimes you will have to get as big as possible within a certain time limit. Sometimes you'll have to avoid some items and pick up other items. But that's kind of few and far between later on in the games. But there are a lot of different variations. Usually you are rolling around in a Japanese town or a kind of a fantasy land that exists like kind of within that same universe. So it's cool. You start off like the size of, I don't know, like a thimble,
right.
Maybe a little bit bigger, like a deck of cards. And sometimes by the end of the levels, you've rolled up so much and grown so big that you're rolling up entire apartment buildings and sometimes entire islands.
Yeah.
So
kaiju monsters.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great feeling of accomplishment because you get to see how much you've changed and how much you've affected the environment you've been in as you play through it. And plus, like I said, the dialogue is absolutely hilarious. The characters are fully fleshed out and have really interesting relationships with each other. We'll talk a little bit about that once we start getting into some of the music. But speaking of the music, the soundtracks are incredible, extremely varied, very quirky, a lot of times electronic, but there's also classical pieces, piano solo pieces, acoustic guitar, folk music. And I think, Ben, you've got some more information about like the particulars of the soundtracks, etc., that we'll talk about as we go through the show as well. But, being a VGM podcast, we are definitely here to show off the music. There have been quite a few Katamari games over the years. There have been 6, I guess you would call, major releases. The rest have all been on like mobile devices, and they've all used soundtracks that were just kind of recycled collections of music from games that have already been out. But all of the core releases have had brand new soundtracks. So Ben and I have each chosen one track from each of the games. So that would be 2 tracks for each game for 6 games total. And we're going to have some fun listening to them, talking a little bit about them, talking about each game and the development history of each game if it's available. I think this will be a great informative show, and consider it just 1 2-hour-long commercial for the Katamari series and why you should play it. Yeah,
this is a great introductory video game, like Babby's first video game.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You just need the 2 thumbsticks to really control, and it's bright and colorful, and there's this peppy music, and you can just sit someone down and be like, here, just figure this out. It's fun. And a lot of people I have had play the Katamari games over time who are not typically video game players.
My oldest son, Eddie, started on Katamari. It was literally the only game he played for probably a few years. He was really, really into this game, and this kind of started him on his whole video game obsession. So Eddie was around 3 or 4 years old when he started playing the game. If you're a little kid with little hands and a not fully developed brain, you'll be able to wrap yourself around the gameplay of these games pretty darn easily. And I imagine that's truth for even older people who are not into video games would be able to kind of get around these kind of tank controls as well.
Yep, agreed.
Cool. All right, so let's start off with our first track of this show. Ben, what have you brought with you this evening?
Gasp, that's me.
That's you.
The first track that I have is called Que Sera Sera. The singer on the track is Charlie Kosei. Lyrics by Asuka Sakai and Natsuki Isaki, and it was composed by Asuki Sakai.
All right, let's hit it.
I know you love me. I wanna word you up into my life. Let's roll up to be a single star in sky. I hear you calling me. I wanna word you up into my life. Let's love up to make a single star in the sky. To you. I'm so in love with you. I wanna word you up into my life. Let's roll up to be a single star in the sky. I need you to feel me. I wanna word you up into my life. Let's love up to make a single star in the sky. To you. To be a single star in the sky. I hear you calling me. I wanna word you up into my life. Let's love up to make a single star in the sky. To you. Yes to you.
All right, we are back. That was Que Sera Sera, sung by Charlie Kosei. Lyrics by Asuka Sakai and Natsuki Isaki, and composed by Asuka Sakai. We did a little quick research sting on Mr. Charlie Kosei while we were listening to the track, and he's kind of an interesting guy, just from his very short snippet on Wikipedia, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. He's, half American, half Chinese, but born in Japan. and he's, I guess his biggest claim to fame was singing and writing the music for some of the Lupin the Third series, which is extremely popular both here and in Japan. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and if you peruse his Wikipedia page, you're mostly going to see Lupin the Third, Katamari Damacy, and then a bunch of ways to pronounce his name.
Yeah, I think, the North American Wikipedia page is just going to have what we know him for, but if you go to his actual website, there's a whole bunch of different bands that he's been in and different animes, and looks like Japanese drama series that he's written music for.
In the profile links there's a 1988 TV documentary called Charlie Japan, and I couldn't tell if that was about him, but if you have a documentary about you, then you must be worth something.
Yeah, that usually means he's got some sort of celebrity status going on. He did write the Back in Kobe City theme song for the Kobe Festival in 1989. That sounds pretty interesting.
That's right.
And he had an ABC TV series called Charlie's Journey in 1989 as well. So that's interesting. I think maybe if you're older than us, you might know who he is more than we do. I mean, I did hear that, or I read in one of the Wikipedia articles as I was doing research for the game, that the developers of the game wanted to take singers and celebrities that had lots of fame like a decade ago and like hadn't been heard from and kind of bring them back.
Way to take one of my points, Ed.
Sorry, but it makes sense here. Charlie Coste really fits that kind of profile that he...
No, it is the exact perfect time to bring it up.
Didn't mean to infringe on your research. I'm very sorry. I know how important you hold your bullet points on our documents.
Well, that's true. But that is one of my favorite tidbits about the Katamari series. Is I had heard that from, I think, Jeremy Parrish. I guess he worked for 1UP for a long time, and he was reviewer.
He's a games journalist. Yeah.
Yes. Host of Retronauts, the retro games podcast. He had said it a long time ago, many years ago, and it stuck with me because I thought it was very interesting. Precisely what you said. I'll get into it a little bit more maybe when we get there.
Cool.
So sorry to have changed direction on you right out the bat, jumping into Charlie Coste.
Not at all. I mean, obviously he's the composer of the track. He deserves some recognition. My question to you is, why did you choose this particular song from the amazing soundtrack to share?
That is a challenging question because trying to narrow down the songs to play are really tough.
Yes, agreed.
I had even teased, is maybe not the right word, but I threatened to force you into letting me play a medley of the overture themes from the first 3 games.
Yeah.
The overture theme from Katamari Damacy was my ringtone for probably, 3 years or something like that after the game came out. There's just a lot of non-traditional video game music in this game that really resonate with me, and I typically do not like lyrics in my video game music. I don't want your peanut butter in my chocolate.
Agreed.
But this is the exception that proves the rule, I guess. The top to bottom, the soundtracks are pretty great and weird and unique, and I thought that I would just pick some songs that are maybe a little bit more unusual from something you would hear in a video game, and I think this is just kind of like something that I would love to hear while I'm eating brunch.
Yeah, and I think that the way these games play, in that they are more of a relaxing game than kind of an extremely intense and stressful game, like it allows you to kind of sit back and enjoy music with lyrics a little bit better. A lot of times it can end up being a distraction because then you're kind of like understanding and processing the lyrics in your head, even if they're not in English. It's still like extra processing cycles your brain has to go through while you're playing the game. But
yeah,
I think in Katamari you get a little bit more of that extra brain power to devote to a full-fledged song. And there's not a whole lot of sound effects going on either, and what sound effects there are kind of muted and laid back. So I think they really kind of wanted to give the soundtracks a much bigger position in the full zeitgeist of the game.
Right. Except for when you get to the end and you have that horrific alarm sound that goes off. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that is nightmare stuff.
But just a little bit more on Que Sera Sera as far as my opinion goes. I absolutely love this song. It is kind of a standout, I think. It's very original in sound on the original Katamari game, because a lot of the soundtrack for the first game is really quirky electronic stuff.
Right.
And this one kind of is a standout because it doesn't really have any electronics whatsoever. I think it's just this very kind of bluesy, jazzy, really pleasant to listen to, and English lyrics too, which most of the lyrics you're going to find in these games are Japanese. So it was rare, especially me having imported the game, to be listening to music with lyrics that I can understand in a Japanese game that was as Japanese as this.
Right.
So I think that's why this track stood out to me when I was playing as a kid as well.
I think we can agree it's great.
I think we can. Absolutely. So, did you want to talk a little bit about the development and the history of the game before I move on to the next one?
Yes. So, and I will just put this one caveat at the start. Much of my research was about the first game and sort of the initial idea. And a large part of that is because there is a relatively new book called Katamari Damacy that was written by L.E. Hall that has a bunch of interviews with the creators. And it came out, I want to say maybe in 2018. So there were a flurry of interviews and reviews that used snippets of the book. So I collected a lot of those to get my information. But because of that, I'm a little bit dense on the first game and more spread out on the rest.
That's fine. We got a lot of music to go through, so.
Yeah. So the franchise was created by Keita Takahashi, who is an artist by trade. And at the time, he was working for Namco in their art department. There is a lot of sort of bureaucratic pushback to get this game made at all. And in a lot of ways, it's sort of surprising that it ever saw the light of day. There's a very linear, regimented, and silo-like Japanese business model where the game ideas only come from the game design department, and you put your time in your desk and you put your years in your job, and then eventually, you grind it out long enough and you get a promotion, and it's very the salaryman lifestyle.
By the books, yeah.
Yeah, so there was no real way to get his idea out of the art department to be made into a game. I believe it was him talking to his, not exactly his boss, but there was like a superior in the art department who encouraged him to kind of pursue this idea. The basics for the Katamari Damacy games, the ideas came from him, and it's obviously very unique and at the time kind of groundbreaking in the direction it went. And so they found sort of a loophole because Namco was developing a new business department where they explored new business models. And in particular, they were establishing a specialized school for making video games for Namco by collaborating with a school for learning computer graphics called Digital Hollywood. It was a 6-month course that was supposed to get developers the skills needed to make a game on a PlayStation 2. And going back to what you said about Guitar Freaks, Konami did the same thing, and they had a Konami education program which made Beat Mania, Dance Dance Revolution, and Guitar Freaks. So Namco saw that and they were like, well, we want to do the same thing.
That's cool.
Yeah, and the course needed a game to collaborate on with kind of junior artists who were just learning how to make CG. And so they ended up picking up Takahashi's idea, and that sort of is why some of the graphics are maybe more simplistic.
Okay, cool. I can see that.
And they are compelling, but they're not dynamic, maybe. They're not, they're basic, but they make good use of the basic shapes.
Simple but effective.
Exactly. And this class at Digital Hollywood ended up making the prototype for the game. And they also got lucky because at the same time, there was an arcade department with Namco that was getting liquidated, and they were about to lay off a bunch of engineers. So the Katamari team, they asked them, do you want to get fired or do you want to code for our project? And so they got a bunch of these experienced coders, and it was this weird kind of amalgamation of lucky events that ended up getting the project pushed through.
Yeah, and a real dichotomy of experiences too. You've got brand new students working with experienced coders. That's interesting.
Sure, yeah. The game was developed not for the PlayStation 2 at all, but for the GameCube, because it was easier to use, and Nintendo is more developer friendly in their developer kits that they sent out and the documentation, and it's just apparently was widely regarded to be a much more user-friendly experience, contrasting with the PlayStation 2, which was supposed to be notoriously difficult to program for, and that is considered to be one of the the roadblocks that were somehow overcome to lead to the success of the PlayStation 2.
Cool.
And one other sort of programming related tidbit is originally they wanted the music to be interactive and change as the Katamari grew in size, and partially they wanted the size of the Katamari to fluctuate with the game, but people who were testing the game out said that losing bulk, shrinking your Katamari wasn't fun at all. They changed the music direction to be what it ended up being, which is kind of these one-off songs that were just made for the game.
Thank goodness.
And it is now a widely beloved game, and it's even included in the collection for New York Museum of Modern Art. Had Katamari Damacy on display there.
Very cool.
That's kind of an information dump. A couple of other just miscellaneous notes that I thought were sort of interesting. The literal translation of Katamari Damacy means clump spirit. In later interviews, the creator, Keita Takahashi, has said that the game is about mass consumption. And a quote from him says, "So many things we have. Do we need that? Do you need that?"
Of course you don't, but, it's the whole he who dies with the most toys wins. I guess this game is kind of the literal embodiment of that.
Exactly.
One little tidbit I can throw in as far as development goes was that when Takahashi was kind of looking for a concept to present, because he wanted to make his own game, he just didn't have a really good idea.
Right.
Namco had on display a prototype game at one of their game developer conferences. I'm not sure which one, but it was about a girl who was able to jump from, they were like floating cities on this level, and she was able to jump to them by riding on power lines, kind of like you do in Mario Odyssey, but this was 3 decades prior. So that's kind of where he got the idea of traveling and using everyday items to do unnatural things. So that's kind of like the spark that ignited his idea for Katamari, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
All right, sir. So are you ready to listen to my first pick of the day?
Boy, howdy.
Alrighty. So we're going to listen to a track called Wanda Wanda. This was composed by a name we're going to hear throughout the entire show, one of the head composers on the Katamari series, Yu Miyake. All right, that was Wanda Wanda, composed by sound director and composer Yu Miyake. Really quick note just to start off, Yu Miyake also worked heavily on the later Ridge Racer games and the Tekken games, and I hear so much of those two soundtracks in this particular track. I think that's one of the reasons why I love it so much, because I'm a huge fan of both of those series, so this track kind of brings the best of all three of those game series into one track. I would probably consider this an IDM track, intelligent dance music, because it's not exactly like what you would get out on the dance floor necessarily. It's like listening techno, which I really enjoy. I love a lot of the... If you're listening to my other podcast, The Arcane Machine, we did a little segment on IDM, and I picked out some of my favorite IDM bands. So this falls squarely in that category. What'd you think of this one, sir?
It's great. I was mentioning when we were listening to it that it's another one of my favorites, but I say that about probably every single track, so it's sort of meaningless. This was one of those ones where when I heard it, I was like, what are they saying? And then later when I discovered that the track is called Wanda Wanda, and you can hear the Wanda Wanda-ing throughout the entire song, and I was like, okay, I get it now.
Yeah. Even the other, like the B section where that kind of funky bass comes in, even that has kind of a vocal quality to it as well. And that's like one of Yu Miyake's kind of trademarks. Even on the Ridge Racer and the Tekken series, you'll hear like samples used as vocal instruments in songs. He really kind of likes blurring the line between synth and human voice, and I think that's what gives his music a lot of real character. So this is a really good example of that as well. Yeah,
this is a good track to, when you're playing the game, make up your own lyrics and that you hear. That's definitely something I did.
No, I can absolutely see that working as well. And this is a great, I think, follow-up to Que Sera Sera, because this really shows off the disparate forms of music that these soundtracks can take. You'll have just this very jazzy, bluesy, organic kind of vocal song, and then you'll have this really electronic kind of cold sounding techno music.
Right.
And it all really fits. Like, I mean, I'm so familiar with the game, but I can picture both of these styles of music easily being in a Katamari game, which just goes to show how dynamic and like versatile the Katamari soundtrack is, and how many different types of music you can fit with this gameplay. It's almost like a universal kind of gameplay, I think.
Yeah, agreed.
So we've talked a little bit about rolling this sticky ball around, about growing in size, about some of the influences that Takahashi had when he created the game. But why are you doing all of this? Well, it all revolves around the royal family of all cosmos, and there are three main characters in these games: the king, the queen, and the prince. That's all they're known as: the king of all cosmos, the queen, and the prince. The king is this enormous, kind of godlike entity. He's human in form, but he has this grayish skin, this really kind of like butt cleft chin, nicely manscaped face, very regal looking, and he uses the royal we every time he talks. He's extremely narcissistic and has a ego that's almost bigger than he is. He's really condescending, but he gives credit where it's due. He's got this giant horizontal oblong head, which all the royal family has. There's the queen, his wife. She's equal in size. She's very quiet. I don't really even think that she speaks until like one of the much later games in the series. Mainly she's just kind of there and smiling. It's a little bit sexist in a way, but like she gets annoyed with the king when he's reckless. And the king is reckless very often. And very often the king needs to or wants to rectify his recklessness because the queen is mad at him and he wants to stay on her good side. She's dressed kind of like Princess Peach almost. She wears pinks and peach colors, very flowy, kind of like big hoop skirt. And then there's the prince. The prince is tiny. So if the king and queen are like the size of skyscrapers, the prince is like the size of a thimble. And he is green. He's got that same oblong head, a little red antenna on the top of his head. And he is just known for being diminutive. Like the king, like that's all he talks about at the beginning of the first game, like just how small he is, and he just can't get over it. And so I think that's a lot of where that condescending tone the king has, because there's such a difference in size between them.
Right.
He doesn't speak at all. The prince is very silent, but he must have enormous strength because he can roll the Katamari around as it grows. So at the beginning, the Katamari is probably about twice the size of him. But as the Katamari grows and starts to roll up towns and universes eventually, the prince stays the same little tiny size, which I thought was really funny.
Yeah.
There are some sub-characters. They are the Katamari cousins. There are hundreds of them. They're a crowd of prince-like beings that the prince can roll up during gameplay. Once they're collected, you can switch to these cousins on the level select screen and make them your playable characters. The king will usually have a bit of a dialogue when you roll up the cousin or after you get the cousin in the in-between level sequences, and he'll talk a little bit about like the cousin's personality or what they were doing at the time. They appear in all the games that I'm aware of. I don't think there are any. Maybe the mobile games, which are a little more simplified, they don't have the cousins in them. So,
do you have a favorite cousin?
I don't really know their names very much, but there was one that was red and black and had this kind of like a crescent-shaped head, almost like a boomerang.
Yeah, okay.
I really liked him. I don't remember his name, though, but he, I think, was in Beautiful Katamari. Do you have a favorite cousin?
Wasn't there... I think there was one that was, like, super fat, but he was still, like, the small size, but, like, compared to the rest of the cousins, he was really big.
Just like a chubby cousin?
Yeah.
That sounds familiar.
I would very often play as the prince just because I liked the prince, but I believe that there was a chubby cousin that I liked. And one more thing before we get too far away from the king talking. Did you mention how he speaks in like record scratches?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I just think that's a funny thing to include.
Yeah, you know what? I always kind of liked it because they picked really fun sounding record scratches. Like I know that, like if you play like the rare N64 games, like Banjo-Kazooie, when the characters talk, they have this kind of sound. They have a very similar kind of sound effect when they talk, but they picked like the most grating, annoying sounds possible. When the king talks, like it sounds like a real DJ, kind of like going at it on the vinyl.
Yeah.
So it almost sounds like he's playing his own music as he's talking.
Right.
It's really cool.
It's more musical, however they have done it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's, like taking a sample of a record scratch and play it as an instrument or something almost to have it not be so jarring and terrible and instead just be kind of a funny touch.
Exactly. It's just better sound design.
Yeah.
I think. So in the first game, in a drunken stupor, the eccentric, godlike king of all cosmos, he destroys all the stars, the Earth's moon, and every celestial body in the universe, excepting the Earth itself.
We've all been there.
We've had those days. You wake up with a headache and you realize the entire universe is gone. So the king charges his son, the prince, to go to Earth with a Katamari, a magical ball that allows anything smaller than it to stick to it and make it grow, and collect enough material for him to recreate the stars and the moon. And the first game also has a side story following the Hoshino family as the prince works at his tasks. The Hoshino father is an astronaut who was scheduled to go to the moon right as the king destroyed it. And so the daughter of the Hoshino family, whose name is Mishiru, senses the prince's work, and so she can feel when each constellation returns to the sky. Ultimately, the family, along with their house in town, are rolled up in the Katamari that is used to remake the moon. So it's very interesting there. A little bit about the gameplay, like we talked about earlier, you just use the 2 analog sticks. It's kind of like tank controls if you've played Battlezone or something like that. It's very similar, except instead of having 2 big joysticks, you've got 2 analog sticks. You push them both forward to go forward. If you push one up and one back, then you will spin in place. You can strafe to the left and right by moving them both left and right. You can click both sticks to make a quick turn, shoulder buttons to freeze the ball and raise the camera to see better around you. So there's a lot of ways that you can kind of manipulate the ball. The ball has like a big weight to it. There's a lot of momentum. So if you're moving along or moving down a hill and you're pulling back on the controls, it takes a little while to stop. So you really have to kind of get used to not turning on a dime and moving immediately when you want to.
And that changes with the size of your Katamari. Because when you start small, it's much easier to maneuver. And then as you are pushing around this like hulking ball, then the physics start to come into play.
There's quite a bit of momentum there after a while. Yeah, exactly. So you start each level at a varying size. The king tasks you with growing to a specific measurement. So he needs the Katamari to be a specific size in order to be a celestial object. So if time runs out and your Katamari is not big enough, then he's like, nope, this isn't big enough to be Jupiter or whatever it is. So you're going to have to play the level over again. He really yells at, like, he gets pissed if you aren't big enough. Like, he will shoot I-beams at you. Like, literally, you will regret not making it big enough. Fortunately, it's not that hard to get big enough. The real challenge is to get the Katamari big enough where the king is actually pleased.
Right.
So you can meet his measurements, but he'll be like, it's all right. We're not very impressed. Like, you did an adequate job. If you want him to be really surprised with your work, then you've got to really make it at least like twice as big as he's requesting. And you grow by picking up bigger and bigger objects. So when you start off, you're like, the size of a deck of cards. You might be able to pick up some paper clips, maybe like some dice.
Thumbtacks,
pencils. But you might not be big enough to pick up a domino right at the beginning.
Right.
So you pick up like 20 or 30 dice, you get big enough, and then suddenly you realize you can bump into these dominoes and actually collect them. And so then you get bigger, and then you can eventually start picking up items that you were just bumping against before, and you'll soon kind of understand how easy it is to play this game, and pretty soon you're giant rolling around, where you used to be like a little kind of tiny crumb on a table. Now you're rolling up the table that you were once rolling around on top of. So
the level layouts are such that you can be like gently guided. It is rare that you would like paint yourself into a corner where you suddenly have nothing that is going to get you any bulk to your Katamari.
Right.
But it is clever in that there's generally going to be each part of the level will be arranged so that there are things of different size. And I was also just going to say it's kind of fun to see how you can start to gauge when you're big enough to pick things up. You'd be like eyeballing the bike rack and you're like, I need 3 more dogs before I can pick up that bike rack. And you just kind of get this verb set ingrained in your brain and can start estimating things.
Or like, once I pick up that old man that's, sweeping in front of that shop there, then I'll be able to get once I get 3 of him, I'll be able to get that bear that's been running around in the forest that's been growling at me.
And since you said picking up the old man, I just wanted to also say that made me think of, I think it is hilarious that when you pick up people or like living things, their legs just go like flailing around. But they don't like bend at their joints. It's just straight legged and straight armed where they're flapping around like crazy and they go into turbo mode, and it is very amusing. The other thing I wanted to say is I forgot to mention just a couple of quick things about the music from the first game when I was talking about game development stuff. We did talk about Yu Miyake, who is the principal sound designer and the composer. He wanted the music to be catchy and pop oriented, which definitely catchy, and I could see a little bit of the pop-oriented stuff. I think it's a little bit out there for maybe fully pop. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that at some point, there was a plan that if they had a trio of games, they were going to do Japanese composers only for the first game, world composers for the second game, and then remixes in the third game. And that didn't quite come to fruition, but I will get into that a little bit more when we talk about the next game. And the other thing that Yumiake said was they wanted pretty silly, goofy selection of singers.
I think they definitely succeeded there as well.
Yeah, agreed.
For sure. All right, man, so let's move on, because we've been talking for quite a bit here. We are ready to move on to the next game called We Love Katamari.
And we do.
And this was released on the PS2 in 2005. So what you got for our first track from this game?
All right, so I have the game Disco, and then there is a picture of a star, Prince. So I think I've seen it Disco X Prince also written out.
Interesting.
But let's just call it Disco Prince. The song is sung by, and the lyrics are written by Kenji Ninuma, and it is composed by Hiroshi Okubo and arranged by Hiroshi Okubo and Yu Miyake.
All right, be right back.
憧れのビューティフォースター回るディスコボールやってきましたディスコホール目指せ輝くナンバーワン望みは高く限りなくオラのダンステップにみんなハンズアップフロアのテーションはもうライズアップクラペハンダベヨースタンダッパ集まってそう固まってヒアウィゴーだエブリバディレーザービームでレッツラゴー上り詰めるべディスコプリンス宇宙に届けこのディスコダンスみんな大好き I love you ディスコテックそうファンキーナイMIC でチェコワンズオラの話も一遍聞いてくれ熱い魂語るライムスターそうやってきましたアイマスター夢は輝くナンバーワンきっと届くべな君ねこの思いラップテックにみんなハンズアップフロアのテーションはもうライザークラペハンダベヨースタンダップ滑舌は確実そう格別ヒアウィゴーだエブリバディチェケラッチョーでレッツラゴー上の方目指す方集めて固めてそして語るべみんな大好き I love youしてそう集めれば星になるいつか To the sky 誰だって飛べるのさ夜空を走る王様 ブルでこんにちはオラの友達で紹介すっからな魂回すよ DJ やつのプレイはそう GJ ナンバーワンやつのスピンアップにみんなハンズアップフロアのテンションはもうライズアップクラッペハンダベヨスタンダップまとまってそうくっついてキュッキュッキューのパッパッパテカテカテカテカテカみんな大好き I love you ディスコテック so funky night逃してそう集めれば星になるいつか To the sky 誰だって飛べるのさ夜空を走る王様レインボー金色に見え I change my life 夏の虹めがけて To the sky 必ず見つけるよ憧れの beautiful starしてそう集めれば星になるいつか To the sky 誰だって飛べるのさ夜空を走る王様レインボー金色に見え I change my life 夏の虹めがけて To the sky 必ず見つけるよ憧れの beautiful star
All right, that was Disco Prince, or Disco Star Prince, or Disco X Prince, sung and the lyrics prepared by Kenji Ninuma, composed by Hiroshi Okubo, and arranged by Hiroshi Okubo and Yu Miyake. What say you, Ed?
I say that I'm raising the roof on this one. We were actually talking a lot about that while we were listening. Yeah, great song. It doesn't feel so much disco as it does like kind of like a house song to me.
Yeah.
I really love the textured synths in this. I almost envision like, Japanese salarymen in suits and ties like doing the rap. Like it just feels like it's a really kind of proper kind of rap lyrics. Obviously, I don't know the translation, but it has this kind of unique charm where it's like proper older gentlemen doing like hip music is what it sounds like to me.
Mm-hmm. I want to live in the world that you just painted with your words. I think that's a fair representation. It's just a really pleasant, feel-good, energizing track. Pretty different than my last pick, but as we've been hammering home, the soundtrack is so varied that you can just reach into a hat and pull out a track and you'll get something kind of wild and different. And I tried to have a eclectic selection, as is my wont to do, and so Disco Prince is one of the ones that right when I hear it. It's a long song, but I've gotta listen through the whole thing.
Totally agree. It's one of those tracks that I specifically remember as really enjoying when they come on in a game. I guess Kenji Ninuma is a movie star. So he's been in like the Battle of Port Arthur. He's got the Japan Record Award for planning, whatever that means.
So arguably the most Japanese award of all.
But yeah, he's a recording artist, and he's also been an actor in Japanese series and movies. It's just a very rough translation from a Japanese website, so I don't have a lot of real information on what. But again, he was one of those probably celebrities that was very big and, you know, fell off the radar for a little while and then was brought back for this track. So that's pretty cool.
A lot of albums too as a singer.
Yeah, there's a lot of YouTube videos actually of him singing in, looks like it's just going off of like the thumbnails that are playing when I mouse over the YouTube, but there are student bands. It's like he's like singing on a variety show.
Yeah.
And there are like Japanese high school bands playing behind him as he's singing, wearing a suit. So I think I pretty much just, that picture that I painted earlier was pretty accurate.
Yeah. Maybe he is the Disco Prince.
He is the suited up Disco Prince. That's perfect. We love Katamari, one of my favorite Katamari games. I feel like they really kind of refined the gameplay of the original with this one. Got any information on the development and history before we kind of get into that stuff, though?
Yes. Not as much, but yes, I do actually. Originally, Takahashi didn't want to make a sequel, and I have a quote from him. He says, "There are so many sequels. Even though these are games, I didn't really feel there was anything exciting or fun about them at all. That's why I hadn't planned on creating a sequel to Katamari Damacy." I think he was just talking about generally the sort of saturation of sequels in games there. But ultimately, there was sort of this unexpected fan support for the game. Like you mentioned, they weren't originally planning on bringing it to North America, or I guess the rest of the world even. And
yeah,
somewhere in my research, I remember reading about it. Now I don't know where it is, but they did, obviously, whatever the reason was. And then it kind of caught on and became this sweetheart and got all this praise. And I didn't mention it earlier, but the soundtrack for the first game charted on just the regular music charts in Japan, just standard pop charts or whatever.
Oh, cool. That is one thing to mention real quick, that all of these games did have retail CD soundtrack releases, and sometimes even more than one CD release per game, which is very cool. So that's how much cultural impact these games had and their soundtracks on the gaming community at large at the time.
Right, because of the sort of groundswell of fan support. Again, Takahashi said, "Ultimately, I was amazed that folks out there had so much fun with this rough, small-minded game, and decided that I would participate in this sequel project." Because of that, they tried to cram in a lot of fan service for the sequel. And, for example, the way you pick missions in the game is by taking requests from fictional fan characters. And that was a direct nod to the fan support to have the game made.
See, now we're even, because you just took one of my notes.
Hiya! Couple of short notes. The sound direction was again by Yu Miyake. The composers for the second game, like, they all appeared in the first soundtrack except for one. There was one addition in Katsuro Tajima, and again featuring a whole bunch of Japanese artists, like we were just treated to, Mr. Disco Prince himself. But for those of you who were thinking, but Dyad, you promised me that the first game was planned to be Japanese and the second game was planned to be artists from around the world.
That's right.
J'accuse. Apparently, they couldn't get non-Japanese artists because he said, "we lacked foreign friends and the ability to negotiate." So I guess they just didn't have contacts, and then possibly going through less friendly channels, they didn't have the scratch to get them to do it.
Interesting.
The final thing is they wanted the sequel to be more grown-up feeling. They said that if they did it in the same way as the original, they would maintain the same quality, but Miyake wanted to go far beyond imagination and fans' expectations. But according to him, there would have been an overwhelming shortage of labor, and they didn't have the resources. So I never found exactly any specifics on how he was going to take the soundtrack far beyond imagination, but maybe some sort of I don't know, adaptive music or something, and for whatever reason, just too labor intensive to see to fruition. So they just kind of doubled down on the quirky, fun soundtrack like they presented in the first one.
Interesting. Maybe fans' expectations would be more kind of has-been celebrities, and they wanted to get maybe more people that were more contemporary.
That's fair.
Of the time,
that could be.
you know?
Yeah, that could have been.
But that would have also cost a lot more money as well. So who knows? In any case, I feel like, and as I feel with most of the Katamari soundtracks, the We Love Katamari soundtrack is just as strong as the original one. A lot of new original stuff. I don't think there are very many remixes on the We Love Katamari soundtrack. There might have been a couple rehashes. I'm not sure.
There might be some parts that, quote earlier songs, just have little snippets as a nod to them, but I don't remember off the top of my head any true remixes until the next games. But I know there's the Katamari theme. Dun, sure,
dun,
right.
dun, 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 that kind of appears in a couple of different songs. But yeah, the soundtracks get very, very remix heavy as you go throughout. And the good thing about that is that the remixes are not just like, oh, here's the same song with a slightly different beat. Like they really manipulate and have brand new interpretations of old favorites.
Foreshadowing.
Yes, which we'll hear a lot of going forward. But this is a song that I picked that I don't think had any remixes at all, and it was only on this particular game. It's a really bizarre kind of electro-punk track called Kuru Kuru Rock, composed by Il Reem, who was responsible for the lead and chorus, vocals, the lyrics, the composition, the arrangement, and the drums, and Kazumi Nikaido on chorus, guitar, and bass keyboard.
It's a good one.
Be right back.
Go! いる夢です。バカで赤で転んでね。始まりはいつも豆粒だけどうろうろしてたら見えてくる。舵取りいつに引き継ぐだけどうろうろしてたら増えてくる。しっこいのしっかりびっくります。でかいのやっぱりしっくりやすい。たんまりの頑張りどころですね。にんまりさせるのが見どころです。大人も子供もみんなね。奥さんも旦那さんもみんなね。思わず笑顔のままでお外へ飛び出しどちらへ塊へダ
All right, that was Kuru Rock, composed by Ilreem on lead and chorus vocals. Also the lyric writer, composer, arranger, and drummer. And Kazumi Nokaido on chorus, guitar, and bass keyboard. Oh, I didn't put a comma there. On chorus, guitar, bass, and keyboard. On the bass keyboard. It's only half a keyboard.
This is the lower keys. Yeah.
Somebody ripped off the other one during a wild party, which sounds like what was happening during this track. Speaking of which, I love these songs where people just sound like they're having an absolute blast recording them. Just like get a bunch of your friends and like scream some phrases into the microphone. So that's a feeling I got from this one. It's just fun. It's punky. It's glitchy. It hits all the buttons for me in terms of like cool, quirky music goes. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and what you're saying to me is that this is the Lil Jon of Japanese glitch punk.
Okay. I see what you're putting down there.
I think fun is maybe the first and foremost word to describe it, as just a kind of goofy. I forget exactly the quote from before. They wanted a pretty silly, goofy selection of singers. Well, this is a silly, goofy song, based on the singer itself. I also said when we were listening to it, it sort of takes you on a journey. There's a lot of parts of this track. It kind of goes all over the place, and I am what will now be my new catchphrase whenever I appear on your show. I'm here for it.
And I'm glad that you are, because I'm here for it as well. Ilreem is a dance / electronic / J-pop artist, and they've had a bunch of albums made in Japanese. Jun Komoda, Ilreem Go-Go. So there's very limited information on English, on the English web, but they've got like 16 albums and EPs that have been released over the years, starting in 2000 all the way up to 2014. So I imagine that they all sound very similar to this. I guess Ilreem his real name is Jun Komoda, and I'm not sure who the other artist is. Kazumi Nokaido. He or she does not show up anywhere else in liner notes for Ilreem. So instead of just having a singer on with, Namco composers, this is an actual artist that just wrote an original song for the Katamari series. And actually, this makes me want to go out and find more of their stuff, because this is incredible. This is one of my favorite tracks from this album.
Yeah, it's great.
And also very unique. I think we're picking a lot of the unique tracks. This is, nothing else on the We Love Katamari soundtrack sounds quite like this one. And this one would always stand out to me. So whenever a level started up and this track started playing, I would always be banging my head as I rolled around and picked up grannies and punks and bicycles and bowls of ramen. A little bit on the plot and gameplay additions of We Love Katamari. Like you said before, this game kind of acted as an allegory for the unexpected fandom of the original game. So the sequel sees the prince and the king becoming famous for their shenanigans in the first game and receiving letters of praise from people all over Earth. Each level starts with the king reading a fan letter to the prince, which always includes some sort of request. So the prince will walk around on the Earth and meet a Katamari fan. And the fan would usually have something complimentary to say about the king. Like, the king is so suave, I would love to see him roll up some jewelry. And so you'd go up to the king and be like, King, can I do a level where I roll up some jewelry? Like, you wouldn't actually say that, but the king would just respond to you, jewelry? I don't need to wear jewelry. I'm handsome the way I am. And then you'd see a little bubble come up from the side of the screen from the person that you just talked to. And it would say, like, King, you're so suave. And then the king would, like, stop for a second, and he'd be like, suave? Well, I guess suave people really do wear a lot of jewelry. I'll tell you what, Prince, why don't you go down and roll up some jewelry? Like, it was his idea. And that would kind of be the common theme throughout the entire game, is that he would shoot your idea down, he'd listen to what the fans said about their compliment, and then he'd pretend it was his idea and tell you to go do it. So, and that's the perfect personality of the king, kind of summed up in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And it allows the game to do a lot of really cool and unique things This was the game where you would actually, like what you were saying before, you would actually roll a snowball. There's a giant snowman without a head in the middle of the level, and you've got to roll around in the snow to get your Katamari big enough within a certain amount of time, and then roll up to the top of the snowman to make a snowman head. One of my favorite ones is you start with a smaller sumo wrestler who's
right.
he's a fan of the first game, but he's got this big sumo match coming up, and the sumo that he's going to fight against is much bigger than him. So you've got to roll around in this level full of food, and so the food sticks to him and he absorbs it and grows into a bigger sumo. And once you think that you're bigger than the sumo, you can roll into the other sumo and it'll tell you whether or not you won the match. So they're pretty funny. This one, instead of the sub-story with the Hoshino family, this one kind of delves into how the king became the king. So he has this whole story about his father, who's the emperor of all cosmos, who he calls Papa, and who treated him... I'm not going to say him treated him really poorly, but, like, was really hard on him. Like if he had a karate match and he came in second place, there was a scene of him, like, taking the second place trophy and, like, throwing it into the river underneath a bridge, and you'd see like little baby kings, like his eyes would be full of tears. And so that's how he grew into like being ready to take on the whole universe, is because he was prepared by his father. But he didn't really have a good relationship with his father because of this, so he had a lot of regrets in not being close. So it kind of goes and tells the story of the king through like infancy all the way up to present day. The last level is really cool because you start off rolling up the king. You start off with the king as a baby, and then you keep rolling him until he eventually grows into a full-grown man as you kind of roll up these memories that he's had throughout the entire game. So it's a cool way to wrap the whole story up, and they just did a lot of really cool, unique things with this one. I think this one had probably the most dynamic gameplay of the whole series. Do you have any like specific memories of this one that you like?
The sumo wrestler one that you mentioned is one that is a high point for me. It's just funny with his like arms and legs out and pushing him around.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. I don't know. I know I played it a lot. I don't know if I even finished it all the way, because I don't remember the pushing the king level, but I know I put so much time. This may have been one of those ones that I did a lot of battle mode with. Granted, my experience going forward is fairly limited, but this was a good second step in the franchise. They added some thoughtful gameplay elements and iterated on the gameplay in a thoughtful way. There's maybe not as much growth, or at least it's a common criticism for the later games, that there's not as much growth, which I think you are prepared to rebut.
Yeah.
This is a very, very, very strong sequel.
I'm probably a poor judge of game growth because I appreciate granular growth in games. Like, I'm a huge Dynasty Warriors fan, so that should just tell you that I love playing the same damn game over and over again with a different number tacked on the end.
Right.
So I'm probably not a good judge of what is acceptable game growth in a series.
You've got Mega Man mentality.
Yeah, exactly. The cool thing about this game in terms of the controls department, mainly they were the same, but they added this kind of spin dash move where you can alternately rock the left and right analog sticks up and down, and the Katamari will kind of rev up and then shoot forward very quickly. So it really helps you cover a lot more ground if there's not a lot in front of you and you've got to get to a certain area and the clock is ticking down. So that is kind of like when you go back to the original game, it's kind of like a sorely missed, because it became the common move throughout all. It's kind of like the dash in Mega Man, basically, like starting with Mega Man 3. You like might want to go back to Mega Man 2 and start dashing and then feel that you're unable to. So that's kind of the same feeling you get from the original Katamari game. Otherwise, it doesn't really add too much in the terms of like single player controls. This one did add a cooperative mode and a battle mode, like you said. Cooperative mode is interesting because each player takes one controller. One person controls the left analog stick, the other person controls the right analog stick, and then you kind of try to cooperate and move the Katamari around basically the single player level. So you're playing the single player game with your controls split among two controllers. So it requires a lot of cooperation and communication between the two players. Battle mode is exactly what it sounds like. It's split screen. Each player gets their own Katamari, and you basically race to see who can pick up the most stuff, and you can also bump into the other person's Katamari to shake items off of their ball to shrink their size to get yourself ahead in the game. So other than that, I think we're going to move on to our next game. This is the first game that Takahashi did not work on. So he left the series after We Love Katamari and moved on. And so Namco made a game called Me and My Katamari. This was released on the PSP in 2005. Ben, what's your first track for this game?
So, this is a game that I did not play, but that did not stop me from listening to and very much enjoying the soundtrack. And this track in particular is one of my favorites. It is called Katamari on the Funk. Mm-hmm. The lyrics are by Yu Miyake and Naoki Toyama. It was composed by Yu Miyake, and the vocals / I guess the song itself was performed by the Katamari Soul Trains, which is a fairly lengthy list of performers. Benny Diggs, John James, Lisa Fisher, Nick Richards, Kevin Owens, not the wrestler, and Paulette McWilliams.
Interesting. All right, well, let's take a listen. We'll be right back.
Come on. You know why? Because we're so...
we're back. That was Katamari on the Funk. And you know what? I feel like maybe I can just say performed by Katamari Soul Trains and not go through the list of the names this time.
That works for me.
Okay.
At least written and composed by Yumiaki and Naoki Toyama. This is like one of the defining Katamari songs for me. Because it's been remixed so many times throughout the series that this one almost sounds like a remix to me because I'm more familiar with the remixed versions. But I've always loved this track. It's really cool that, again, it's another song where the lyrics are in English, so it's just kind of fun to listen to, and it kind of gives you, I guess, maybe a hint of what maybe the Japanese lyrics in some of the songs might be, which is basically just talking about partying with Katamari, more or less. So,
Right.
What was your reason for picking this track?
It is a what I would call a blasty ass horns song, and
indeed.
I like it's almost like blue-eyed soul neo disco funk music, sort of, or something. It's like something like Kings Go Forth. I like this kind of music. I'm not super well versed, I guess, in current versions of funk music, but it's like just a very compelling, happy, upbeat song. I can picture myself, while I haven't actually played this game, I can picture myself doing the Katamari things to it very easily. I thought it worked well with the somewhat repetitive but very energetic, and it immediately captured my attention. And also when I was more broadly narrowing down my picks, foreshadowing. There was a remix of it coming that I knew I must play, and so I thought it would be interesting to have the original and remixed version.
A little compare and contrast. That's perfect. Yeah, and I definitely think this probably has a little bit more soul than funk to it.
Yeah.
For sure. And again, it's a really long track. It's like a 10-minute long track. So what Ben and I agreed we're going to do is, so you heard about the first 4 minutes of it. As I usually do, I'll fade down and we'll be playing the rest of the song underneath our little talkie part here. But then for those of you who want to listen to the rest of the song, there is some really cool parts towards the end which are unique to the song. It doesn't like repeat the whole thing over again. So I'm going to fade up the song at the end of the show so you guys can listen to the rest of Katamari on the Funk. And so that way you guys get the full breadth of it without having to go a full 10 minutes of the same song with those blasty-ass horns.
Yeah, 10 minutes may be a bit too much of this song without a Katamari to push to keep you occupied. all in one sitting, that is.
Yeah, exactly. So, anything about the soundtrack for this game that you dug up?
Not as much, but it is, again, headed up by Yu Miyake. The soundtrack for this one is mostly made up of remixed and featured tunes from previous Katamari games with a few original compositions such as this one here. After the first two games were just generally positively received, this seemed to be the start of the more ambivalent reviews, and I picked a few snippets just to get a sense of how they were treating it in the gaming press. Eurogamer called it just a rehash of tunes from the console Katamari games, and as much as we enjoyed them the first time around, we were hoping for something new here. Sorry, I should have clarified, this is generally referring to the review of the soundtrack specifically for this game. GameSpot said that a lot of the music is identical to that found in past Katamari games, which makes it an easy fit. Though it would have been nice if the game featured a little more original music. And Games Radar said the soundtrack isn't new, but has songs ripped from both previous PS2 titles to set the mood appropriately.
Games Radar didn't even recognize them as remixes. Jeez.
They are not exactly tearing the game apart, but they're just sort of meh on it, on the idea. And I think that some of the later games do a better job of the remixing aspect than this one, in my personal opinion.
I always felt that the PSP was kind of like a... Sony always treated it as kind of like here's a side game. Like, it was never like meant to be a full, like... any series games that were put out on the PSP were never meant to be like a core canon kind of a game. It was always kind of like here's a game that you can take on the go that's an approximation of what you have on the console.
Right.
So it almost feels like that's what they treated this soundtrack
Yeah.
as well, as just kind of like here's music you've heard before but slightly different, which is exactly what they did with the PSP. Here's a game you played before but slightly different. Put it in your pocket, kids.
It's the modern day equivalent of a cell phone game release.
Yeah.
Like in between their AAA.
It's in color. It's got an analog knob. You'll love it.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
go for it. That was not the case with the PSP. Anyways, this is probably one of the only PSP games that I played like full through to completion. Like I owned a PSP and was just not a fan of it at all, but it was Katamari, so I needed to play it, and I was very happy to have a version that I could kind of take on the go. I had this game while I was working for a cell phone company. I was a cell phone repair technician for Sprint/Nextel right around the time that they merged. And I was working in their corporate offices, and we had just opened a new one in a town about a half hour away from the original one I was working at, and nobody knew about it. Like, they just didn't do any advertising that we existed, and we didn't even last there very long because nobody ever came in. So it was just me and this other guy just kind of like sitting, twiddling our thumbs for 8 hours a day. And so I would start bringing my PSP in, and Katamari had just come out around that time. So my only memories I have, like any memories I have of playing this game, peripherally I see my old repair Sprint Nextel office kind of in as a backdrop to the whole thing. And I think I played through the entire game like at work. So
Nice.
it made it fun. So
I have been fighting off diligently the Pavlovian response I have to you saying the word Nextel to not make the chirp noise for the phones. That is I can't help it. But so far I've managed to avoid it, so we're good.
good.
But we're in danger, just so you know.
I have so many positive and negative connotations with that chirp. All right, so the next track from me and my Katamari is going to be Jesus Island, composed by Yumiake. Welcome back from your lovely trip to Jesus Island, composed by Yu Miyake from the game Me and My Katamari, released on the PSP in 2005. This is a little bit more of Yu Miyake's IDM branded music. I like this one because this one is a good representation of how the Katamari melody is incorporated to a lot of different sounding music throughout. So you get that da 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 da. You hear that repeated. That's the motif repeated throughout all the games and all the music in the series. And so this one is more of like a thinner kind of a techno melody line instead of the big bombastic kind of vocal or horn presentation you might get in some of the other songs. So I'm curious, what did you think of this one?
I like it a lot, and just as a side note, now that I know the gameplay a little bit, Jesus Island makes a little bit more sense.
Yes.
Couldn't quite... I mean, I guess not that much more sense, but I know that, the tidal wave and all that, tsunami. So when we were listening to it, I was mentioning the robot frog noise that I was really finding very pleasing.
Yes, I thought the same thing.
And you talking about the incorporation of the theme in different ways throughout the franchise. And when I was doing research for this episode, I read a much more scholarly article than I normally would that kind of got into the note progression and a bunch of very deep analysis to me, a music Luddite, it was deep analysis. It might be basic. It might be Babby's first music learning. But and I tried to follow it because I thought it would be interesting to talk about. And I was like, we'll just say that they used the same stuff more than once and then stumble my way through it.
Works.
But
a little bit of leitmotif there.
Exactly. It is done in a creative way in a lot of different songs. And that's sort of interesting because many times the composers Yu Miyake composed a lot, but not all of it, So sometimes the music will be handled differently by different people, and there's a lot of somewhat compelling usage of going back to that little pretty catchy theme. So I like it.
Yeah, and I think it's a great way to make such a dynamic soundtrack sound more cohesive. It always kind of brings you back to that one element that kind of ties it all together. And I love soundtracks that do that. Like the Mother 3 soundtrack is one of my favorite soundtracks of all time, and it's composed around 3 specific melodies, and there's like 120 something tracks that use 3 melodies, and they're just used so well. And I think they really do that with this soundtrack as well, extremely well.
We all know that Toby Fox invented it when he did the Undertale soundtrack. He invented leitmotifs.
Oh, of course. He didn't rip that off at all.
Before that, it was someone else. You're misremembering if you think someone else did it.
Exactly. It's the only game that means anything to anybody at this point. Anyways, let's get into a little bit of the plot and the gameplay. As far as gameplay goes, the royal family takes a vacation to a tropical island to relax. The king goes into the water, starts having a great time, splashing around, just being a general reckless king as usual. Creates waves that are so big that he generates a tsunami and sinks several islands and all the wildlife on them. So,
oops.
That king. So a couple of animals start coming ashore, and they don't really, they can't remember anything. They've all been, knocked on the head. Eventually, this turtle washes ashore next to the family, explains the situation, and so the king tasks the prince with rolling up things on their island to make new islands for the wildlife. It's a much smaller scale game. There's no planet rolling or universe hopping in this one. You're just kind of rolling around on this one particular island to make new islands for the wildlife. Gameplay changed slightly because the PSP doesn't have 2 analog knobs. It only has that one kind of analog disc on the left-hand side. So you use the 4 face buttons as a substitute for So if you play Smash TV on the Super Nintendo, the arcade version had 2 joysticks. So you would use the triangle button to go up and the X button to go, reverse, and circle and square for left and right. So you kind of use that in conjunction with either the D-pad or the analog stick to control your Katamari.
Sounds awful.
Yeah, I believe in the Japanese version you could only use the D-pad, and the analog stick was used for camera control. But in the US version, you could use the analog stick or the D-pad for controls. and then you could use the L and R buttons, I think, as camera. I don't know, it's been ages since I played this game. I do know that they kind of revamped the controls a little bit for the US release. It's okay. You know, like the PSP is kind of a scaled down version of PS2 hardware, so you get smaller areas to roll around in. There's not as much stuff to pick up. It's just, you know, it's a watered down version of Katamari. It's an interesting plot, and it really kind of follows everything that the first two games did to a T, just in portable. So, I mean, I guess looking at it from the perspective of a 2005 gamer, where you've had this console game that you really enjoy, and now you can take it with you on the go and get a pretty good approximation of what you were playing on your TV, it's cool. But I think the control limitations, like I remember my thumb being really sore and raw from having to, like, you know, skid around on the four face buttons as basically a makeshift D-pad. So pros and cons. I know, you know, there's a really good PSP emulator called PPSSPP for the PC, which like upscales PSP games and plays them all really well.
You say that one more time, 1.5 speeds.
It's a PPSSPP.
For the PC?
I'm trying not to like say that directly into my pop filter, so I like blow up my mixer here. But yeah, so you can actually remap the controls to the analog sticks on whatever controller you're using on your computer to make the game much more playable, and upscale it to 1080 and then play it on your, you know, your computer monitor or your TV. So I think that's the better way to play it at this point, to make it more like a console experience if you just want to see what me and my Katamari is all about. So I don't know many people with a working PSP still in existence right now. So
I have one.
Well, good.
It was a gift from Alan Euler, aka Periodical. But unfortunately, someone must have dropped it because there's a crack in it.
Dun, dun, dun.
So maybe I will track down this game.
So maybe you want to play it on the PPSSPP.
Yeah, on PC.
On PC.
Yeah, I think that's probably the better way to do it.
Agreed. I can help you set that up if you'd like.
Yeah.
Anywho, yeah, that's all I've really got for this one. Decent game, but like I said, you know, if you want to really get into the series, actually, I recommend starting with Katamari Reroll, which is a new HD, basically level-for-level remake of the first game that just got released on PC and Switch and maybe PS4? I'm not sure. I definitely know it's on the Switch and the PC, but it's basically the original game just upscaled 60 frames per second on the modern consoles, and that's really the way to get into the series.
Yeah, I was just playing it this weekend.
They did a really good job with that. I'm totally forgot to mention that while we were talking about the first game, but yeah, that's absolutely the way to get introduced to the series, and then maybe play some of the sequels later on. Speaking of sequels, we've got another Katamari game coming up. We're going to listen to some tracks from Beautiful Katamari, which was the Xbox 360 iteration of the series that was released in 2007. What you got for us, sir?
Well, I will be coming at you, Cleopatra, with a song called Bless My Stars, composed, arranged, and the lyrics are written by Akitaka Toyama, and the vocals are by Lan Suzuki.
All right, be right back.
We are back. That was Bless My Stars. Composed, arranged, and lyrics written by Akitaka Toyama, and the vocals by Lan Suzuki. What'd you think, Ed?
Good stuff, man. You said that you had dedicated this to Rob Nichols and I, and we did do that drum and bass episode together, which had some fantastic tunes in it, and this would have fit extremely well with that. Very drum and bassy, but very kind of laid back at the same time. Like a lot of drum and bass has a very kind of frenetic, exciting feel to it. But this is more like loungy drum and bass. You know, the drums are going a mile a minute, but everything on top of it is very kind of sleepy and dreamy sounding. I really liked it.
Right. Dreamy is a good word. You have these kind of airy, spacey vocals kind of weaving in that grounds the song somewhat, or I guess maybe not grounds it. It launches it into the clouds instead. Float along.
Rolling your Katamari on the sky, which I think is where the tutorial level for Beautiful Katamari starts. You're rolling amongst the clouds. So it's been a while since I've played it, but this may even be like the tutorial song, believe it or not.
I believe it.
This would be a very good tutorial song.
I'm down with tutorializing
it. So you have not played Beautiful Katamari at all?
I have played very little of it. I know I've played it, but I just can't remember nearly anything about it. Because I didn't come to it right when it came out. I don't think I had an Xbox 360 until like 2010 or something. So it wasn't like in my game pipeline.
Yeah.
I only played it when I was visiting friends.
So this game's got kind of an interesting history in my family because, like I said, I started off, my oldest son, Eddie, on, I believe it was the original Katamari, and then he graduated to We Love Katamari. And so he played through both of those, and he, at like 4 years old. So he got really into them, beat them both. He's like, I want more Katamari. I had just gotten a Xbox 360 for my birthday, and so we set out to find Beautiful Katamari so that he had the most recent, at the time, Katamari game to play. And at that point, the game had been new and then went out of print, and so it was like nearly impossible to find. So I remember for like a couple of months, like every time my family and I would go to a mall or a strip mall or whatever, we would always pop into GameStop to see if they had a copy of Beautiful Katamari on the shelf. And like I remember one of them like having it, but it was just the case. They didn't have the actual game, and I was like really disappointed. He was crying, and I was like, oh,
God,
man,
come on.
So we finally found it, brought it home, and I remember really, really liking it. Like I don't know why I didn't like actively seek out. Well, I didn't have the console when this game came out, so I guess that's probably the reason why. But really enjoyed this one. I think it's a more stripped down Katamari, but it's also the first game that was in HD and widescreen, aside from the PSP. But it also is really smooth. Like, they did a really good job at making the game run at 60 frames per second. I think all the other games that have come out before and after this have been 30, aside from Reroll. So the extra frame rate on this game, I think, just makes it so much nicer to play. It's just that kind of buttery smoothness that just really makes the game kind of feel different than the other iterations of it. There's not too much to say about gameplay other than that. As far as the plot goes, the royal family's back on vacation. They're playing some tennis, and kind of similarly to like me and my Katamari, the king gets carried away. He serves a tennis ball so hard that it rips the fabric of space-time, creating a black hole which sucks, again, all of the celestial objects in the universe, except for the Earth, up into it. And I can just imagine the prince looking up and going, oh, crap, Dad, not again. So, everyone's pissed off at the king, and so the king tasks the prince with rolling up everything on Earth to make new constellations and planets, and culminating in rolling up a super giant Katamari to plug the black hole at the end of the game to prevent future rips in the fabric of space and time. This was the first game to include an online mode, and also some DLC, but it was really controversial because at that point, DLC was relatively new. A lot of these games were just coming out on the 360, and this was one of those instances where Namco put the content on the disc, but you had to pay to unlock it. It wasn't like stuff that you could download. They would, you would pay the money, and it would just unlock. You would download like a 350 kilobyte, like basically a key that would unlock it that was already on the DVD. So people were pissed about that, and I don't blame them.
Yeah. Actually, it was all 4 of the downloadable levels were only 384 kilobytes of space.
Yeah, so kind of lame. I of course did it because it was Katamari, and I wasn't gonna not have the whole thing. Also because I bought the game pre-owned, it was a lot cheaper anyway. So I think I probably spent as much as I would have for the full new game by buying the original and the DLC. But yeah, so it was a fun game. I think we probably put the most number of hours into this game just because Eddie would play it over and over and over again. So it wasn't even like me necessarily playing. It would just be like, come home from work and there's Eddie sitting upside down on the couch playing Katamari in some sort of weird angle, you know? So, this soundtrack to this game just became like the soundtrack to the goings-on in the house because it was always kind of on. Somebody was always playing it at some point. When my wife and I got married, which was after Eddie was born, when he was around 4 or 5 years old, we had a Katamari-themed wedding. So we took images of the Katamari cousins and put numbers and laminated them and put them on all the guests' tables. So every table had a Katamari cousin. We had my wife, unknown to me at the time, but my wife went on Etsy and found a sculptor who created a wedding-themed Katamari ball being pushed by a prince as our wedding cake topper. It's huge. I still have it. The ball diameter is like probably almost the size of a soccer ball. Like it's pretty darn big. And there's a little prince pushing it, and the ball has like hearts where the little bumps are, and it's rolled up like wine glasses and roses and hearts and stuff. So it was really cool. It was one of the coolest parts that I remember from the wedding. I'll post up some pictures of it for those who haven't seen it. I know I've told the story several times on different podcasts, but so this just shows you how big of a presence Katamari had in my family at that point that we like incorporated it into our wedding. We even played some Katamari music during the wedding reception. There's a song called Galactic Soul, which is from Beautiful it's either from Beautiful Katamari or from Katamari Forever, which was the next game. But we played that while we were doing the cake cutting. A couple of other tracks that we danced to during, when all the guests come out and dance. So it was fun. It was really cool. It was a really good memory and just kind of like cemented really positive thoughts of Katamari into the Wilson household collective zeitgeist. So
yeah, that's one of my favorite stories that I've heard from you. It's all the Katamari theme stuff with your wedding and everything. And that is also one of the reasons why I feel personally like, very happy that I get to be a part of this episode, because I know that it is so meaningful to you and your family. So I'm cherishing being able to kind of continue on your memories in a new form through your podcast.
Awesome. And I will force my family to listen to the whole show as we drive around when quarantine is over.
Oh, God. Don't play the part where I talked badly about all of them. Cut that part out.
Oh, I'll think about it.
Okay.
For a price,
Okay.
Anyhow, I found a little bit about Lan Lan Suzuki, if you were interested.
Boy, howdy.
Yeah, so she, her real name is Tomoko Suzuki, and she was born in Tokyo Prefecture in 1975. She started off as a model, so in 1989 she entered the Miss Champion contest, which is kind of like Miss America, but for Japan.
It's a way better name, I think we can all agree.
I know, Miss Champion. She was the runner-up in that contest, and so after that she became a commercial model working in ads for hair products, etc. In the early 1990s, she started acting and also became a pop singer. Actually, she released 2 albums in 96, one called Bottomless Witch, which I just imagine a witch with no butt.
Wow. What was the name of the contest again? Champion?
The Miss Champion contest.
The Bottomless Witch and Miss Champion is like Getting some real serious video game vibes from this.
I bet, yeah. Her second album was called One and Only, and then she had a whole bunch of singles released between 1994 and 2001. She's been in a ton of Japanese dramas, or doramas as they are known. She was an actress from 1992 with her first dorama called Ghost Soup. I'll just add to this little list of interesting terms we're coming up with here. And then her final one was in 2008 called Osen. And she's been in a couple of films as well. So she's had quite a career in media.
Yeah.
But like I said, I mean, her last stuff was around 2007, 2008. So she had stopped recording music in 2001, but she was still active on TV and film. So I guess that's why they kind of added her in, because she, even though she still had like current celebrity status, she hadn't done anything musically in like a decade or so. So they reached out to her, I guess, to do some music for Beautiful Katamari, which is pretty cool. She has a really nice voice. Like you said, it's very dreamy and ethereal and very nice to listen to.
Yeah, definitely.
That's all I got for Beautiful Katamari, sir. Let's move on to one of my favorites from the series. This is called Katamari Dancing. This is composed and arranged by Yoshihito Yano with lyrics by Kimio Udate, vocals sung by Takashi Utsunomiya, featuring Hidemi Yamamoto and the Katamari Chorus Corps. Enjoy.
Don't tell me what to do. You're not my dad.
Forever
All right, that was Katamari Dancing, composed and arranged by Yoshihito Yano, with lyrics by Kimio Yudate, vocals sung by Takashi Utsunomiya, featuring Hidemi Yamamoto and the Katamari Chorus Corps. Love this track. But Ben, I want your opinion on it first before I say.
Of course, I love it because I love all Katamari music. But when we were listening to it, I was describing it as one part commercial and one part musical in the same era of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, or possibly something like Rocky Horror Picture or something, just like a more rock-oriented musical from the 80s or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like very well-produced kind of dramatic rock or something like that. Every game, which we didn't really talk about, but every game has this kind of opening, like grand animated sequence where, like, you know, characters will fly around the screen and flowers will bloom and you'll see, like, you know, the prince and the king and the queen all in dynamic poses, and so they always have really energetic Katamari leitmotif oriented music to accompany them, and so this is the one that accompanies the introduction for Beautiful Katamari. It's also the lead-off track on the Beautiful Katamari retail OST CD. So this is kind of like that track that's just really, I guess, the flagship song for the whole soundtrack, more or less. And one of the ones that I really, really like listening to the most. Also, because of how much this game was played in my house, it's just ingrained into my memory. Like every note, every Japanese syllable, I've got memorized. So I really, really like this one. I did look up a little information on Takashi Utsunomiya, who was the, I guess, guest celebrity for this particular track. He is a Japanese musician, singer, and actor. He got his start in 1979 when he joined the rock band Speedway. And then in 1983, Speedway broke up and he formed the band TM Network. He later became an actor in 89 by starring in various television dorama and became a voice actor for the TM animated movie Carol 2 years later. He would also start a solo career under the name T-Utu, T.UTU.
T-Utu.
T-Utu, yes. When TMN broke up in 1994, Utsunomiya would go on to form the short-lived unit Boyo Bozo.
Boyo Bozo.
BOYO-BOZO. He also starred in the Japanese version of the musical Rent, and then reunited with his old TMN bandmates in 1999, and then in 2007, he would form the music project U_Wave in 2005. So, pretty neat. He's got a very storied career in both acting and music.
And he's got a very specific look. I encourage you to seek him out and make your own determination.
I mean, he's getting on in years. He was born in, let's see, he was born in 1957, so some of his pics are a little aged looking, but we're all going to get to that point eventually.
God willing and the creek don't rise. The alternative is not so great.
Exactly.
I just think he's got he reminds me of something. I don't know what. It's like a
Japanese Steven Tyler.
Keith Richards or something.
Yeah, I was going to go for that too.
Yeah, Steven Tyler's maybe more accurate.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. So anyways, I have played so much of this game, but I don't know much about the history, and it looks like you've got a few notes here about that. So what you got for me?
Yes, so not a ton. I had here that it was the first game that was not developed by Keita Takahashi, but you had mentioned in the Me and My Katamari section that was the case. So I'm not sure if this, maybe what I read was meaning the first console game, maybe?
Yeah, I think a lot of game journalists just tend to ignore portable releases for some reason, so... Mm-hmm. So either I'm wrong or you're wrong. I guess more internet research will determine who's who at this point.
I will tell you, to add to the mystery, I have that it was directed by the Me and My Katamari co-lead game designer, Jun Moriwaki. So maybe they were co-lead designers, and then maybe this was the first one that he had nothing to do with.
Oh, maybe you're right. Or maybe he left during development or something.
Sure, yeah. It has had sort of a interesting / maybe tortured development history, because it was originally scheduled to be released for Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and the Wii, and it was going to be the first multi-platform Katamari game.
Interesting. Okay, so before you go any further, sorry. I looked up Me and My Katamari, and this says it's the first game produced without the involvement of series creator Kaita Takahashi. So, and then it lists the directors and the designers, and Takahashi's name does not appear in any of them. So
who was Jun Moriwaki co-lead game designer with? Who was the other co-lead game designer?
It was Taisuke Ishida. He was the co-designer on Me and My Katamari.
All right, so it's just the 2005 era game journos saying portables is trash, bro.
I guess so. Or they just didn't like it so much that they just struck it from their memory at some point.
Yeah, that seems very, I don't know, that's a large oversight. And something that, like, if it's significant enough to point out that a game is the first not developed by the creator of the franchise, then probably it should be correct about that.
I guess that just means we're better than game journalists.
Oh, well, yes, but I mean, also at talking about games, I guess.
You gotta come to the VG Embassy for the accurate, up-to-date news on your video game designer information.
Right.
Yes.
You just have to wait a few years until we get around to doing the episode on your game.
Right, like a decade or so.
So anyway, nevertheless, regardless of who developed it, it was going to be developed on everything under the sun. The development on the Wii, and then after that, the PS3 was abandoned, and it ended up being an Xbox 360 exclusive. There was an early press release that talked about using the motion control features on the 6-axis controller for the PS3, and I'm assuming that was something similar to what was going to be used for the Wii, but there was an interview that Moriwaki gave somewhat soon after that described quote-unquote controller difficulties that needed to be worked out.
Interesting.
And eventually they were both scrapped because I guess whatever they had in mind, they couldn't get to work right, and so they ended up just using the regular old sticks, going back to the well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Xbox 360 controller didn't even have any movement capabilities anyway, so since this was the only system this game ended up being released for, that's all they had to use in the first place. So, went back to basics.
Right. Yep. So, kind of getting into the reviews of the game itself, I mean, we now know that how much value can they be? They can't get their facts right, so everything else is circumspect. The general consensus is that people felt it didn't really evolve enough from the prior games, but that if it was your introduction to the series, you would enjoy it, but not if you were returning to it looking for more of the same from the first few games. We talked about the DLC criticizing. There was one notable Destructoid review that called it nickel and diming microtransaction shenanigans, which was a line that I particularly enjoyed.
I was going to say, that's a dyad phrase if I ever heard one.
Yeah. And the other thing that I thought was kind of notable was that one of the achievements for this game explicitly required you to download those stages that were ones that were already included in the game. So
that's right.
It was another kind of insult to injury.
Yeah. It's almost like they developed the full game and then decided to split it apart.
Yeah.
Which is not the way DLC should be designed.
No. I mean, I'm not really a big DLC guy in general, but I'm also generally a curmudgeon, so that's unsurprising probably to most who are familiar with my gripes.
Yeah, I normally don't pay much attention either, but like I said, for Katamari, and because Eddie knew it existed, and really wanted to play them, he kind of goaded me into finally grabbing them. So, anyways, let's talk a little bit more about the music for the game.
Yeah, so a few short things. Yu Miyake wasn't the sound director for this game.
Oh, no.
So this, which I now know my note is incorrect, but it means that it's the first Katamari game that had new people in both of the biggest game and music roles, but I guess that's not exactly true. Nevertheless, there are some new faces in some of the most important facets of this game development. And the final thing I wanted to touch on is that it departed from the last game because the majority of the music for this game was original with only a few remixed tracks. after the last soundtrack kind of flopped, reviews for this one were much, much more positive, saying that it was on par with the first two games. And Square Enix Music Online, which is the previous iteration of the video game Music Online, was actually pretty harsh on it, though. And let's see, I have a quote here that says, "By the fourth iteration, the series should have evolved more than it has, and the same goes for the music of beautiful Katamari."
Ouch.
Yeah, what do they know?
I think Beautiful Katamari had some of the best music of the whole series. So, I mean, these two tracks are great. They were getting more popular celebrities to do the vocals and stuff. Mm-hmm. Tracks like Everlasting Love, like that's one of my favorite Katamari songs of all time. I'll have a remix of that coming up shortly. So I disagree with Square Enix Music Online. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. I mean, I like this one a lot more than the Me and My Katamari soundtrack, and
yeah,
not sure where it ranks in my favorites overall, but I thought it's got some good selections on it.
It's also kind of a hindsight is 2020 thing, so
Sure.
It's possible that these guys were just so used to the original soundtracks that they had just started listening to this one and hadn't grown on them yet. But I'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
I think Me and My Katamari burned up a lot of goodwill. Mm-hmm. And so maybe Beautiful Katamari was kind of riding the ship, being weighted down by maybe some of the negative feelings of the one before it. So
it's really hard to come back in like reviewers' eyes after a failed experiment. That's for sure. So anyways, I think we're ready to move on to the next game, right?
Indeed.
Cool. All right, so this is Katamari Forever. This was the PS3 exclusive release. This came out 2 years later, in 2009, and we've got a really fun remix coming up. What you got, Ben?
Yes, I am. Picture me rubbing my hands together. Creepily, I guess is the best way to describe it. This track is called Katamari on the Funk, which you may remember hearing earlier, but this is the Senior Coconuts Katamambo remix. It was remixed, rearranged, produced, programmed, and edited by Adam, stylized as Adam with a trademark symbol, aka Senior Coconut, aka Yue Schmidt, who was co-arranged and scored by Norbert Kramer. The saxophones were performed by Ashim Schroeder, trumpets by Frank Wiesen, vibraphone and marimba, that's right, get excited, also by Norbert Kramer, and the lyrics, Naotaka Higashiyama and Yu Miyake are credited with the lyrics and music.
All right, cool. Let's give it a listen.
1, 2, 3, 4.
cha-cha-cha.
Let's get together, Katamari on.
Merengue.
Let's get together, Katamari on the
Mambo.
vacation. Let's play Katamari. Keep on rolling, the bigger the better. Time is running out. I got the prince on my side. Here we go, Katamari. Keep on your toes, keep it real. Don't you ever give up. Take me higher, looking good. Rubber time, Katamari. Shake it, funky, baby. Sing along, everybody. Let's get together, Katamari on the. Let's funk together, Katamari on the. Let's get together, Katamari on the. Let's funk together, Katamari on the. Let's get together, Katamari on the. Let's funk together, Katamari on the. Let's get together,
We're back. That was Katamari on the Funk Senior Coconuts Katamambo remix. And to sort of save a little bit of that paragraph of credits, it's mostly done by Atom, aka Senior Coconut, and originally from music by Yu Miyake. I guess, well, I forgot to go back and verify which part of the original song was from Yu Miyake and why they credit him that way, but maybe we can just say mostly by Senior Coconut.
On the original Katamari and the Funk, the lyrics and music were credited to Yu Miyake. So,
Oh, that's right. It was performed by the Katamari Soul Trains. It was not
Exactly.
It was not composed by them. That was what I was
yeah.
mixing up. Okay, all right.
So this is basically Adam's take on Miyake's original piece with new English lyrics
Right.
and additional instrumentation. Chopped up, edited, made fun of, respected. It's all sorts of crazy stuff. This is literally probably one of my favorite tracks from the Katamari series ever. I know I probably said that for almost every single one of them, but
Yeah.
so way back, Ed Wilson fans who have followed me since my beginnings in the VGM podcast universe,
Who?
way back at the end of 2014, when I was doing Pixel Tunes Radio, Mike wasn't able to make a recording for 1 week or whatever, so I took my 7 or 8 year old son, Eddie, at the time. Nowadays, I can't get him to do a podcast with me, which is unfortunate, but he and I did a Pixel Tunes Junior episode of some of his favorite music, and of all of the Katamari pieces that he was familiar with at this point, which was nearly everything that had come out except for the PlayStation Vita game, he chose this particular track as his favorite Katamari song ever. So we played that on Pixel Tunes Junior, and so I'm so glad you picked it for this one, because I didn't want to pick it again because there's so many other songs to choose from. I didn't want to duplicate my own pick, but to see that you picked it means that we were on the right track with a good song, because I know you're a big fan of this one too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was not familiar with the Katamari Forever soundtrack until I started doing like research and prep for this show. And then I saw Senior Coconut and did a double take because I, out of the Katamari context, really like him because he is he's German. He does these kind of remixes of songs like things by Depeche Mode and by Daft Punk, and one of his really famous ones is he does a remix of Showroom Dummies. If you like this treatment of music, there's a version of Da 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 by Trio that he's done. It's great. I love it. I'm a big Senior Coconut booster. I've got my Senior Coconut Pandora station that I will put on when I'm cooking frequently.
For some reason, I thought you were going to say you had a Senior Coconut big foam finger, like you would walk outside.
Yeah. And I use it to push my Katamari around. So yeah, I was very, very excited when I saw that he had something to do with the soundtrack, and it sort of makes sense. It is sort of like a perfect choice for doing a remix for Katamari. So yeah, this is, like we've been saying for everything, one of my favorite songs in the franchise soundtrack history.
We have a lot of favorites, and there's nothing wrong with that.
That's right.
I'm hoping for some of you guys out there who are new to the Katamari soundtrack, you're finding some new favorites as well.
Yeah. Superlatives are the worst.
Yeah. There's nothing worse than superlatives.
Got him.
Anyways, Katamari Forever is... it's interesting. Like, Beautiful Katamari and Katamari Forever are both very dear to me, and kind of for different reasons. So, where Beautiful Katamari really succeeds in game performance and optimization, I guess, of the game play and the game engine, Forever really succeeds in the sheer amount of content and creativity. So I kind of wish that I could combine the two together and make like one best Katamari of all time. So where the Xbox 360 version of Beautiful Katamari ran at a really nice 60 frames per second, Katamari Forever went back down to the 30 frames per second. And after playing Beautiful, like, it felt really weird to go back to 30 frames per second. Like, I know people complain about the 30 versus 60 frame per second thing online all the time, and sometimes I'm like, okay, it doesn't really matter what frame rate your game runs at as long as it's fun. But for some reason with this game, you really notice a huge difference in the way the game feels, depending on how smoothly it's running. So that being said, I did spend a huge amount of time with this game, both Eddie and I. It's known as Katamari Damacy Tribute in Japan, and that's because it was kind of like fan service to the original games. It takes a lot of levels and gameplay from the original games in the series and then adds some new content on top of it, but a lot of it was like, I think it was kind of designed to be like the last Katamari game, which it didn't end up being, but it really feels like they were trying to kind of wrap the series up and kind of give it a really like nice Viking send-off kind of a thing. Just send it off on a burning boat and let it go.
Yeah, exactly.
The plot is the king, I don't remember what he was doing, but he does something stupid, gets bumped on the head, and he gets knocked out. He's now out cold. Basically, he's sleeping on a hammock for most of the game. The prince and his cousins build Robo King, which looks exactly how it sounds. It's a giant robot version of the king. So while the king is full of himself and very egotistical and super confident, Robo King is like really timid, and he's always kind of second guessing himself, and he's afraid of things. He goes berserk because he gets overwhelmed with all the stuff that he needs to do to get the king back awake again, so he wipes out all the stars in the sky. Essentially, you've got two maps to play on. So you've got the king's map, where you can play older levels in black and white, and then you roll up memories to restore color to the king's mind to wake him up, so you're kind of playing older levels in a new way. And then there's Robo King's map. So it's basically like they're both presented as like pop-up books, like pop-up picture books. And so you fly, and then the page will turn to Robo King's map, or turn to the King of Cosmos's map. On Robo King's map, you play new levels to restore the galaxy's celestial objects. When you complete both maps, you unlock the grand finale, where you can roll the biggest Katamari ever made. You basically start the size of a car, and you end up by rolling up entire galaxies. Like, you are literally the size of the universe. It's really, really cool. In the new levels, you can do really cool things like roll up a gingerbread house while a witch kind of chases you around the level. There's one of my favorites where you start off in a desert, and your Katamari is very spongy, and so you can roll through this oasis, and there's a little pond in the oasis. You gather up water in your Katamari, and then as you roll through the desert, a lush jungle will start forming wherever you've rolled. So flowers will grow and trees will bloom, and so your score is based on how much of the desert you turned into jungle by the end of it, which I thought was a really cool concept that they didn't visit in any of the other previous games. One of the other control things that you can do, which I really like, is that you can jump in this game, so you can flick the controller up. I guess that's kind of like what they were talking about when they were doing the 6-axis motion controls for the PS3. Really, they just kind of boil it down to, you just move the controller up a little bit and your Katamari will jump. It's a lot nicer than in the older games. You had to really push against a vertical ledge, and then you would kind of slowly roll up it. With this, you can just jump and just hop right over on top of ledges and stuff. So it really makes the game play a little bit more smoothly.
That's cool.
Yeah, and there's different graphical shaders that you can unlock and apply, like cell shading, pencil sketch, wood grain textures. Just makes the game feel and look a little bit different as you're rolling around. I really like it. It's got a lot of good stuff. It's got the most gameplay of any of the games in the series. Like I said, I wish it were a little bit better in the performance area as far as frame rate goes to make it feel a little bit better. I'm not sure why they could do it at 60 on the Xbox 360 and not on the PS3, which I think on paper was arguably a better performing console anyway. So who knows?
It's that 6-axis controller making too much of a demand on it.
Too many calculations there,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Maybe if you hold it super still, the game will boost itself to 60.
That's right.
As far as the soundtrack goes, it included not too many original songs, but a whole bunch of remixes. So I'm going to play. This is a cool track because it kind of combines a couple of different songs. So one of my favorite songs from Beautiful Katamari was Everlasting Love, and there's also an older track from one of the earlier Katamari games. I'm not sure if it was We Love Katamari or the original, but it's a track called You Are Smart. And so this combines You Are Smart and Everlasting Love. It's called Everlasting Love and You. It's composed and remixed by Akitaka Toyama, with lyrics by Akitaka Toyama and Juri Toyama, with vocals by Leia Dizon, with additional chorus by Ashley. All capital letters, A-S-H-L-A-Y. Let's hit it. All right, that was Everlasting Love and You, composed and remixed by Akitaka Toyama, with lyrics by Akitaka and Juri Toyama, vocals by Leah Dizon, with additional chorus by Ashley.
Leah Dizon is my favorite kind of mustard.
Wait till she goes gray, then it will be even more tasty.
I don't want her to poop on me.
Anyway, speaking of Leah Dizon, I guess I can get her information out of the way right now. She is what they refer to as a gaijin talento, which basically means a foreign talent. She was born in Las Vegas, Nevada in 1986. Her mother is French and her father is a mix of Chinese and Filipino, so she's kind of half Asian. She went to school in Las Vegas, graduated in 2004, became active in theater, and then moved to Los Angeles when she was 18, decided that she wanted to move to Japan to pursue a career as an idol. It seems like a really crazy dream to have as an American 18-year-old.
Yeah, it's weird.
She succeeded. She moved there. She got a recording contract with Victor Entertainment, and she released tons of music. She had 2 million Google hits on her recording tapes, and so she's been active ever since. Basically, what she'll do a lot is take, very similar to this, Everlasting Love, the original version, the vocals were in Japanese. So obviously in this, she sings the same vocals, but in English. So a lot of times she'll do like an English version of a Japanese song, and so she'll record either stuff that's already been recorded before in English, or she'll have her own original stuff. She's bilingual, so she can record in Japanese or in English. She's done photo books, so she's both like a beauty model and a singer, and I think she's done some light acting roles as well. So all around, just kind of like a lot of media. Not really popular that much, I guess, in English-speaking countries, but she has been pretty popular in Japan. Yeah. She's had music that's charted like within the top 10 for a lot of her releases that have come out. So
who cares if she's not popular around the world? She had an unusual, I would say, dream and killed it. Went out there and did it.
And, you know, obviously you're not a real celebrity until you've recorded a Katamari song.
That's true.
So right there. I don't have anything on Ashley, so I don't know who she is. But I like to imagine that Leah Dizon was like hanging out with her friend Ashley that day when she had to come into the studio for recording, and she's like, "Come on, Ashley, let's go record a song." And so she just popped in and kind of like sang some backup vocals, and so they just had to put her on the credit.
Ashley.
That's Ashley's story.
Could be a robot. Maybe it's an acronym for something.
That's true. It could be the Robo King version of Leah Dizon.
Advanced singing, hearing, lingering, and yelling. The Ashley bot.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I like it.
I don't have much to add. The music in the game was, again, featuring originals and remix tracks, and it was in line with that original trilogy idea, using the latter games as remixes, combining electric and organic sounds. Compared to the last couple of games, the soundtrack for this one was much, much better received, and it even outcharted the original soundtrack on the Japanese pop charts.
Oh, cool.
And it was pretty high. I think it was even in the top 100, which may not seem that great, but for a video game soundtrack to just be in mainstream music, pretty remarkable, I would say.
Yeah. I think what you maybe a little glossed over a little bit was that Yu Miyake returned back to the series after leaving for Beautiful Katamari.
Yes.
Which is very cool.
Yeah.
Which explains why there are a lot of really good original tracks, and it's not just kind of a remix fest. So I really like that.
Right. We were talking about how it was maybe a little bit surprising that there weren't more mashups, given at this point, the depth of things they had to draw from. But I think this was a well done thing, especially if you know both of them as their original versions. This is a cool way to repackage it.
Yeah, I do urge you to listen to the original versions of You Are Smart and Everlasting Love, because they're both fantastic pieces of music, and they're both very different from each other. Like You Are Smart, as you can tell at the beginning of the track, is very kind of grindy and electronic sounding, and then Everlasting Love is really J-pop, and they kind of mix them both in this song pretty well, which I thought was really fun. Let's move on to our last game. I know the show's going pretty long, but there's a lot of information to get through, and it's a lot of cool music, so
That's right.
hopefully you guys are still with us. We're going to listen to a game that neither Ben or I have played. I don't even have a Vita to play this one, so I don't have a lot of information on it, but we're going to listen to Touch My Katamari, which was released in 2011. And I give you consent. It's okay. It's okay. You can touch my Katamari.
Okay.
What you got for us, sir?
So I went into yet another direction for my final pick here. This track is called Jupiter Dub number 404, and it is composed by Taku Inoue.
And this one has Logan's seal of approval, just so you know.
All right, that was Jupiter Dub number 404, composed by Taku Inoue. Are you sufficiently relaxed and dubbed?
I am. When I first heard this track, I likened it to the strange love child of Yuzo Koshiro's Super Adventure Island soundtrack and the crazy kind of trippy drug-fueled soundtrack of Hotline Miami. I feel like it is a really good kind of combination of both of those.
Yes, and I don't remember what I responded to you when you told me that the first time, but...
You told me I was wrong and that I should feel bad because I was wrong.
Well, if I said that, then I've certainly changed my tune, because I feel like that is a very accurate description. So much so that I'd love to talk about it right now on this podcast.
Yay!
Yeah, I think that is a very amusing observation that is, by my estimation, very on point. again, I've been trying to reach into different corners of what the soundtracks have to offer, and this is unlike anything that we have heard before.
Yeah.
It's a genre that is not precisely in my wheelhouse, but I do recognize that it is Jamaica dub music, and that is why that it is called Jupiter dub, I am sure.
I'm like kind of trying to imagine like where this track would play in the game, because it's so not Katamari, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like the king would be like, I don't know, I accidentally smashed all my ganja and now you need to go and like roll through the marijuana fields, and it's like it almost feels like something like that, or like it just feels very relaxed and like laid back. So I don't know, maybe it doesn't take place during the actual rolling sequences, and that it's more of a cinematic or something where somebody's very sleepy or whatever. I'm very curious to see where this plays. I gotta try to track some video down of this game and figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if I hadn't played any of the other games, then maybe I would have been like, how can this fit in a video game? How could this fit in a Katamari game for some of the other tracks?
True.
But
it's all about that gameplay experience that makes you wiser. But because I don't have much experience at all, I can at least tell you about the plot. Long ago, the King of all Cosmos brought light to the sky and replaced the stars of the universe, giving the people of Earth a beautiful portrait and a source of great inspiration. This, as you might imagine, made the King of all Cosmos tremendously popular, and he savored that popularity until a normal family, in a discussion about the king's awesomeness, mentioned that the king and the local school principal were equally cool. Now, this horrified the King of all Cosmos. The king then confesses to the prince that he had been a bit lazy, and that it was no wonder that Katamari Damacy fans were disappointed. He instructs the prince to roll Katamaris that the king can eat to make the cosmic belly fit once more. So you're, instead of rolling stars in the sky or constellations or stardust, you're rolling food for the king. So maybe Jupiter dub plays when the king is full, like, and he's just leaning back. He's got his hands in his pants. He's like, oh, I ate too many Katamaris. And you hear this kind of in the background as smoke rises from a weird off-screen place. The cool thing about this game is that it's got some new gameplay elements, because the Vita had a touch screen and a touch back, I guess is the best word for it. You can use your fingers on the screen and across the back of the console to stretch out the Katamari to make it either taller or wider, so different areas of the game will have areas that you would need to kind of compact or contract yourself into to fit through. Or if you were rolling over a field of flowers, for instance, you can make your Katamari wide so you can pick up more flowers in the field as you move on towards your size goals. So it's kind of interesting.
I can't figure out if that would be fun or annoying to do that.
Yeah. Again, I don't know really how necessary it is, because I know like so many of the additional gameplay elements in Katamari games, you can kind of get through the games without using very much. So I don't know, it might be one of those things where you need to use it a couple times, but for the most part, it's kind of a traditional gameplay thing. One non-traditional gameplay thing is that the player is able to earn candies when they play every day. The player is rewarded with 1 candy, and it doubles the more days they play until the candy count reaches 256 candies. You can use candies to buy items from the shop to stylize your prints and give them accessories and stuff, which was an element in earlier games that we didn't really mention, but
right.
In a lot of the later games, I think from Beautiful Katamari on up, you can use points or roll over gifts to unlock accessories that you can then kind of stylize your prince and the cousins with different outfits and stuff. So this is kind of taking more of a kind of mobile game aspect of it, where they have kind of like in-game currency that you can use to buy stuff.
Yeah, the thing that everyone is clamoring for, more mobile game content in our standard video games.
Everyone's favorite. So anyways...
If only I had to watch an ad before I could save my game.
Oh, God. You know, if they were funny Katamari ads, I would absolutely be there for it. But if it were a real ad, no thank you.
Yeah.
Not my jam. Anyways, let's move on to our last track of the show. This is called Shabadooby. It's the Takeshi Nakatsuka edit, originally composed by Yoshihito Yano and remixed by Takeshi Nakatsuka. We are back. That was Shabadooby, the Takeshi Nakatsuka edit, originally composed by Yoshihito Yano and remixed by Takeshi Nakatsuka. Very fun track. I felt this was a really fun one. to go out on, something that's maybe a little bit of an earworm that might get stuck in your head. What'd you think of this one, Ben?
Yeah, I shouldn't have listened to it because we are recording at this point what is pretty late, and I will be going to bed right after this, and I feel like I'm gonna go through my routine, brush my teeth, climb into bed, get all situated, and close my eyes, and then suddenly in my head it's just gonna be
I'm right there with you. It's either going to be that or the Senior Coconut Katamari on the Funk mix is going to rush back into my head. Either way, they're both very, very catchy tunes. And that's really what Katamari songs are all about. Just being fun and catchy, well-produced, cool to listen to. And like I said at the beginning of the show again, just the gameplay itself is very relaxing and doesn't require a whole lot of like split-second reaction kind of stuff. You're kind of, really just kind of planning out where you want to go and what you want to do. And it gives you a lot of time to kind of sit back and concentrate on the music while you're just kind of exploring these areas and trying to grow your Katamari as big as you can. So,
are you calling it the walking simulator of giant ball rolling simulators?
We can do that. I think that might be the only one out there. So sure, it could be the first-person shooter of rolling ball simulators too, because there's nothing else out there to compare it to.
Okay.
You did tell me right before we listened to the music that you had a gameplay-related question you wanted to ask.
Oh yes. So having gone through and covering the plots of all these, I wanted to ask you if you had to pick a favorite of the in-game rationale / like catalyst for what has destroyed the cosmos. Like, for instance, in the first one it's the drunken bender, and the last one it's the comparison with the principal. There's the one with the whatever he sneezes and there's a tsunami. What is your favorite means of destroying the cosmos?
Oh, absolutely, it's beautiful Katamari. I remember when I was watching that introductory sequence and seeing the king serve that tennis ball and rip the fabric of space-time, I was like, that is the most absurd thing I've ever seen in my entire life. I was laughing for a good 3 minutes about that. So definitely mine. What about yours? I'm curious.
I'm traditional in my drunken benders. When I first saw it and like was trying to wrap my head around the story, and it was like my first foray into Katamari, and I'm like, so the king of all cosmos got drunk and broke all the stars, and then he's making you fix it. I was like, yeah, that checks out. This is a good game for me. I want more of this.
Absolutely. As far as the best writing for the game goes, I think the funniest one has got to be We Love Katamari. Just that whole segment where he's like,
Right.
I don't want to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And then somebody compliments him and he's like, second thought, this was my idea all along. Like that's just so king to me. So I like playing that game just to go through the stories and just reading the kind of exposition in between each of the levels.
So I don't have a ton of stuff to say about this game, but I do have a few more additional things to add. Touch My Katamari overall kind of slunk back down into middling reviews. We talked about Jeremy Parrish earlier. In his review for 1UP, he said that the series now continues to miss the point, that it was one of the past decade's most innovative new series, keeps retreading the same ground, and says that it has done practically nothing to expand on that premise since the game's first sequel almost 7 years ago.
Yeah.
So as far as gameplay, not a glowing review.
I think, being the huge fan of the series that I am and was at the time, if the game had gotten better reviews, it might have been enough to tip me into looking into purchasing a Vita.
Yeah.
But I just really didn't feel like I was missing much when this game came out, because I was really curious to see what people thought of it. And when I saw that nobody really had anything good to say about it, I was like, all right, fine. I guess this will be the one that I skip out of all of them. So, and I haven't really regretted it. Like, nobody's really come around to it and be like, sometimes a game will come out and have bad reviews, and then 10 years later, people will be like, oh no, wait, that game was really good.
Right.
It hasn't happened with this one. So I don't feel like I've missed out on much.
But you mentioned earlier that your mastery of the game, other than just sort of making you be able to complete the game quickly, I sort of feel like you can just revisit the original couple and just have the enjoyable experience of immersing yourself in this world and playing around with the mechanics and stuff like that.
Yeah. Spending a lot of time away from it, enough to like kind of forget a lot about the game, and then coming back to it feels like, playing a whole new game all over again. So I'll probably end up doing that with We Love Katamari at some point now that I've just finished up Reroll.
Yeah.
Because I haven't played We Love Katamari probably since it was brand new, like 20 years ago. So I'm looking forward to that.
Last thing I got is on the music. This is a new person in charge of the music for the game. It is Taku Inoue, who is the composer of the track that I played. And at the time, he was pretty new to the gaming industry as a whole. He had joined Bandai Namco only 3 years before that. And this was him, heading up a game on his own. So that's a pretty steep progression. Before that, he was in a unit called Apple Bonker. They're not a band, but they released sound sources and made remixes and produced original music and composed melodies for commercials and played at live events. So they were like I don't know.
It's like a crew.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have the demo scene mentality now for some of this stuff, and it just made me think of like the musicians in a demo group where they churn out stuff. He had no academic musical background, and he had a degree in Portuguese and a grad degree in informatics, which I don't know what that is, but I saw it and I was like,
interesting.
That's sounds made up, but
probably has to do with, I don't know, information flowing back and forth. I don't know.
And the Maddox behind it. And the last thing on him is he worked on tracks for the installments in the Tekken and Ridge Racer franchises. And now I'm forgetting, was it Yumiyake who also did work on those?
Yes.
So that overlap is, I'm guessing, probably why he ended up taking on this project.
Yeah, I'm familiar with his name from the Tekken and Ridge Racer series, and he does a lot of really good electronic stuff. So
go check out Apple Bunker.
I guess I should. I'm really not familiar with the Touch My Katamari soundtrack at all, so now that I have been able to source it in the process of sourcing music for this show, I should probably go listen to it and concentrate on Inoue's tracks and see if they hold up to the Tekken and Ridge Racer stuff that I'm familiar with from him.
Yeah, I mean, there's some other good music on here. I came real close. I had a real agonizing time. I narrowed it down to 2 tracks and decided to pick this one because I thought it was a little bit more unusual.
Yeah, and it's a little, I think I kind of pushed you towards it too, because it was a little bit more of a difference between Jupiter Dub and Shabadoobie had very different feels.
Right, for sure.
So it's kind of like demonstrated the breadth of the soundtrack for Touch My Katamari. Mm-hmm. And that being said, sir, I think we are finally done with the show. That was a long one, but it was a good one. A lot of really good music here.
Yeah, I feel like we could go another 3 or 4 hours, so let's just pick some tracks real quick and knock it out.
Sure, let's do it. We'll just play the entire selection from all the soundtracks. Yeah. So just an unbelievable amount of music in this game. And like I said, with all of that, we just kind of touched on a little smidgy tip of the Katamari iceberg. Yeah. And I don't know, if this is well received, maybe we'll play some more Katamari music on future shows. Who knows? Yeah. That would be cool.
Your smidgy will evolve into a smidgioto if you level it up.
Exactly. Is that a Pokemon reference?
It is.
Okay.
It's the kind of Pokemon reference you get from me when it's after midnight on a school night. That's what happens. You get Pokemon puns.
All right, so let's, considering everything and that it's like after midnight now, holy crap. Well, let's start wrapping up. Ben, anything you got going on? You mentioned some pixel art, so where can people find things that you have put pixels on?
Yes, so as of right now, I've been definitely in the art-focused mode, but if you are curious, you want to go see some pixel arts, go on, you can follow me on Twitter, @TheDiad. That's one word. You can always also chat it up with me on Discord. I'm pretty often hanging out in the VG Embassy Discord, so come say hey.
Absolutely. You can head over to thevgembassy.com, and there's a little widget on the right-hand side of the page. You can click on the Discord widget, and that will bring you to our Discord where you can chat with the Dyad and so many other past and future VG ambassadors and just general friends of the show, where we share memes, music, daily thoughts on life, etc., etc. It's a very fun place to hang out. If you want to check out other social media aspects of the VG Embassy, head over to Facebook, facebook.com/group/the VG Embassy. We're on Twitter at the VG Embassy or on Instagram at the VG Embassy. And I'm doing this out of order, but I'd also like to thank Indira J for the art and Trevin Hughes, aka Dread, for the podcast theme song. You can check out my Patreon at patreon.com/the VG Embassy and find out how you can take a bigger part in the show, whether it's by being on the show, introducing some themes, or being privy to our special bonus monthly episode called Embassy Exclusive. And with that, I'd like to thank all of my Patreon patrons, without which the show would not be possible. At our tourist level, Cameron Childs, aka Bruce Irons of the Mad Gear, Michael Bridgewater from the Forever Sound Version podcast, Donovan Orofino, and Chris Murray. Our VG emissaries, Chris Myers, John Jekyll, aka Mixix Master, Ben, the Dyad Dishman.
Who?
I don't know, I keep putting the Dyad Presents a VGM podcast, but maybe I should just do from the pixel arty demo scene.
I'm only lulling you into a false sense of security, and then just when you're sufficiently lulled, the new episode will drop.
I wish to be lulled into this security because I want more of your shows because I love them. So do it.
All right.
That's all I'm saying. Even if it's a winter episode in July, I will accept it.
That may be, that may be hinting at something for all you keen listeners.
Interesting.
And now that it's out there, who knows? Maybe I'll have to do it.
Now you got to do it. Or I'll look back and go, wait a second. Anyhow, moving on, Chris Steenerson from the VG Jam podcast, Jordan Worma from the Table to Stage podcast, David Parrish, Bedroth, Ganon11, aka Mike Stark from the Norwalk Gamer Symphony Orchestra, Kaiser Sose. Did you put that there?
I did.
Okay.
I don't know if you were going to listen, if you were just going to read blankly or even notice.
Anyways, now we're both getting punchy. Audio attaché members. Cameron Worma, Carlos from the Heroes 3 podcast, Scott McElhone, and Dan Lawton from the Village Persons podcast. Our special agent tier, Volt Supreme of Volt Supreme's VGM Steam Machine, Muddle Madness, and Ryan Steele. And of course, our VG ambassador, the patron saint of VGM podcasts, Alex the Messenger from The Messenger Presents a VGM Journey podcast. All right, so to leave off the show, if you still want to listen to more VG Embassy, we are going to play the last half of Katamari on the Funk for your listening enjoyment. Ben, thank you so much for hanging out. This was a great time. It was a long time, but it was a great time. I feel like my love for Katamari has been accurately portrayed in this show, and I think yours has as well.
Yeah, I'm very enthusiastic about some things, and this is one of them.
And I'm really excited to see what people think who aren't familiar with the series. I'd love to hear your opinions on the music, so please let us know in the Discord, Facebook, Twitter, what you thought of the show and what you thought of all the cool tunes we just heard. We'll be back in another 2 weeks with another awesome episode of the VG Embassy. Farewell, everyone.
Bye-bye.